Chapter 11, The Red-Haired Girl. If it was a normal person, even with a decent amount of profound strength, one would still not dare venture forward in this scenario. But Xiaoche did not hesitate one bit as he walked directly toward that abnormal mass of white shadow. As he gradually approached, he suddenly discovered that it was actually a person. A very quiet person was lying there. "Who are you?" When he saw that the blurry image was that of a human, Xiaoche stopped walking and asked. The silhouette did not respond, and there was not even a single tiny bit of breathing movement coming from it. Had this person fainted? Or had died? Who was this guy? Why did this person collapse here? Wait. If this person had fallen in the daytime, someone would have already come upon this individual. Yet it seemed as if Xiaoche was the first to discover this guy, which meant that this person had only appeared here just now. The earliest time would be after night completely fell. Xiaoche did not hesitate and quickly walked closer. As he came before the body in front of him, he stared at the figure while in a daze, under the moonlight. This was actually a girl. The girl looked to be either 12 or 13 years old and wore a messy dress. Her daintily cute and petite body was curled up like a frightened kitten. Below her skirt's hem revealed two slender snow-white legs, but upon closer scrutiny, there was actually a distribution of little fine scars. She wore one black shoe on her foot, with the other shoe nowhere in sight. Her naked foot was like a delicate ice lotus, and her exquisite toes were as clear and translucent as a jade carving. The most striking detail on her body was her hair. It was unexpectedly like that of an evil demon's uncanny bright red color. The cold flash of light saw in the corner of his eye was actually the reflection of her head. A girl. How could a girl be here? And how could it be possible that she had that many scars on her body? What was the reasoning behind her hair color? Did the profound sky continent have people who were born with such red hair? Xiaoche bent over and stretched out his hand to gently shake the girl's shoulder. "Little girl, little." Xiaoche's voice suddenly stopped after he cried out in surprise. As quick as lightning, he retrieved his hands back from the girl's shoulders. This was because through her thin clothes, her body was completely cold, without the heat that a living person should have. The most shocking feeling of all was when he came in contact with the girl's body. It emitted an extremely poisonous aura. Yes. It was highly noxious to a point that it scared him, for it was a kind poison that had the highest level of toxicity he had ever met, far exceeding that of all the poison knowledge he acquired from his past world. It was so terrible that once his hands came in contact, all the hairs on his body stood erect. At the same time he backed away, Xiaoche startled in surprise yet again. The weed and vegetation around the girl under the presence of the moonlight was not dark because of the lack of light. It was not dark green but rather a horrible black burnt color. Even the land around her had become a pitch black. Xiaoche's heart thumped in piercing terror. If it weren't for the sky poison pearl's all-purpose poison detoxification in his body, the instant he touched the girl's body, he would have had already been poisoned to death. In this world, how could there be such a terrible poison? The most malicious of all poisons, wasn't that the sky poison pearl? Even back in the days when I used the sky poison pearl, it did not release such a horrible toxin. In fact, it was by far lower. Could it be that in this world there is something even more poisonous than the sky poison pearl? How did this little girl have such a terrible poison within her? And why was she lying in this area? Numerous doubts surfaced in Xiaoche's mind, but it was undoubtable that this little girl was dead. With this kind of severe poison, not even mentioning this little girl, even a strong Sky Profound Realm practitioner would die instantly. Xiaoche took a deep breath and after a slight hesitation, he again put his hand on the girl's shoulder and slowly turned her lifeless body over. Under the moonlight, the girl's face appeared in his light of sight. He froze in shock as he looked at her, as if he had lost his soul, unable to return back to reality. How can there be such a beautiful girl? Xiaoche's soul let out an uncontrollable tremorous cry. This girl was so beautiful, a monstrous beauty, so beautiful that she could probably steal souls. If he was not seeing her with his own eyes, he would never have believed that such a young girl could unexpectedly release such thrilling charm. As red as a demon, a face of white jade, each of her facial features were all beautiful to the extreme, and all of them combined together made her unbelievably perfect. Xiaoche could not find any words to describe this girl's exquisite appearance. He was obviously looking at her from a close distance, but in his heart, he felt as if she was an illusion come to life, because in his subconscious mind, he did not dare to imagine that there existed someone in this world who had such a perfect face. Xiaoche was the #1 beauty in Floating Cloud City, and even in the Blue Wind Empire, there probably wasn't anyone that could compare to her. However, when Xiaoche saw this girl's face, he was stunned, as if his soul had been punched heavily. He never would have thought that he would be so strong, affected to the depths of his soul by only a person's face. She only looked like 12 to 13 at the moment. If she grew up to the age that Xiaoche was at, that would be simply unimaginable. Maybe then, she could cause chaos with only just a smile. But such a beautiful girl was killed by a toxin that a poison expert like Xiaoche had never seen before, and she had died on the land of the Xiao clan. Xiaoche could not figure out what poison it was and why it was here. He only felt that it was such a misfortune. It was unfortunate that this beautiful girl had been so brutally destroyed. What kind of people would actually be cruel enough to have the heart to kill such a beautiful girl? Xiaoche looked at the contaminated black vegetation and land around him. He hesitated for a moment, but still ended up stretching out his left hand to press his palm against the girl's cold chest. The sky poison pearl then quickly started to detoxify the poison in her body. This was the Xiao clan's back mountain. Judging from the power of the poison in her body, if it continued to spread, the entire mountain could end up a dead mountain. Although the sky poison pearl's power had almost disappeared, it still had the ability to detoxify poisons. The sky poison pearl in his palm continued to shine, purifying the poison in the girl's body. Soon after, Xiaoche felt a slight fluctuation in the girl's chest and saw the girl slowly open her eyes one by one. She had a pair of exceptionally very black demonic-looking eyes that flashed mysteriously as she blinked. As Xiaoche met her eyes, he felt a horror equal to that of falling down a deep abyss that gave his heart a fright. This girl, who was extremely poisonous, without any breath, and had a deathly cold body, had now opened her eyes. The girl reached out her right hand slowly and firmly seized Xiaoche's left wrist when he was still in shock. She moved her lips and let out a voice. The voice clearly said, "Sky Poison Pearl." Xiaoche's quivered as if hit by an earthquake. He could not believe his ears. Sky Poison Pearl was an object brought here by him from the Azure Cloud continent. It did not exist in the profound Sky continent, but this girl had just said the name Sky Poison Pearl. Did he hear that wrong? Or was it just a coincidence? "Little girl, you are." Followed by the sound of Xiaoche's sharp moaning pain, the girl opened her lips and firmly bit on his left finger. Blood then started to stream down Xiaoche's middle and index finger, all flowing into the girl's mouth, without a drop on the ground. Alarmed, Xiaoche tried to pull his hand back, although the girl's little snow-white hand looked delicate. Her grip was as strong as iron as she bit him while holding his hand tight. Xiaoche had used his full strength, but he was unable to withdraw his hand. His eyes gradually widened as he felt as if all the blood in his body flowed to his left hand by an irresistible force, to then end up being sucked into the girl's mouth. "She's sucking my blood?" The girl closed her sinister dark eyes and sucked on his finger greedily, like an infant drinking milk. Who was this girl? This girl had obviously been poisoned to a deadly degree, yet she left him unable to break free of her grasp. After desperately trying to pry himself free many times, he finally gave up as he helplessly watched her suck his blood. Xiaoche was already born with a weak body, but after losing such a huge amount of blood, his head started to feel dizzy. As he wondered if his blood would be sucked dry by this unknown girl, the pain from his left hand finger suddenly disappeared, and the hand that tightly gripped his wrist had slowly loosened. Xiaoche stepped back, looking at the perfect girl with a dark expression, who was just sucking his blood. But after a while, the girl didn't do anything. Just like when Xiaoche first saw her, she was just laying there with her eyes closed and no breaths. Xiaoche took a few steps back and looked at the perfect girl with a dark expression on his face. Just now, the girl had been clearly sucking his blood, but after a while, the girl did not move at all, looking just like the time Xiaoche first met her. She was just quietly lying there with her eyes closed, soundlessly and breathlessly. A cold gust of night wind went by, brushing against Xiaoche's back and the girl's body. In the cold wind, the girl's body scattered with the wind like mist, completely vanishing from sight, leaving only a broken white skirt, a pair of black princess shoes, and a red butterfly lip. Xiaoche disappeared. A weird sensation came from his left palm. His heart immediately shivered with an astonished expression. He then closed his eyes and spiritually moved his conscience into the space within the Sky Poison Pearl. The green interspatial storage within the Sky Poison Pearl was supposed completely empty. When he entered inside this time, he saw a quiet floating snow-white jade body in front of him. Xiaoche widened his eyes as he used his hand to cover his nose for the first time in his life. This girl was that little girl who had sucked his blood. The only difference was that she had not a strand of thread on her body, and her entirely naked body appeared in front of his eyes. Her eyes were closed tight and her snow-like face was tranquil. Her long bloody hair fell down, dancing by itself without the slightest breeze. Her skin was as tenderly smooth, moist, and as white as an infant's, with delicate baby fat. The girl's eyebrows were like emerald feathers, her waist was thin, and her legs were daintily straight, as if made of jade. Although she was young, her upper body had considerably matured. Her snow-white breasts were like two jade pearls on her perfect body, as soft as the springtime shoots of bamboo. A beautiful, breathtaking sight. This was a body that was still not matured yet, but there was still the release of a stunning charm that would steal souls in her immaturity. It was as if all the beauty in the world had been mustered inside this body of ultimate perfection. Xiaoche used his will to concentrate as hard as he could to move his eyes away from her body. He turned around while still clutching his nose. The instant he saw the girl's body, he felt as if his blood would flow upwards. He believed that if he continued to watch her, his blood would definitely spurt out. Why was she not wearing clothes? No, that wasn't the main point. She had clearly disappeared before, so how did she suddenly appear inside his Sky Poison Pearl? The Sky Poison Pearl had fused with his body, so I should be the only one who could control it. How could she appear in here without my command? Was it because she sucked my blood? What the hell was going on? Xiaoche's brain became a total mess. Even with his 2 lifetimes worth of academic experience, he was unable to understand what had happened. Chapter 12. If you weren't my little aunt. Xiaoche withdrew his consciousness from the Sky Poison Pearl and picked up the girl's clothes from the ground. He purified the poison on them before sending the clothes back into the Sky Poison Pearl, then quickly covered the girl's body with them before letting out a small sigh of relief. What kind of person was this girl really? Why did she appear here? Why did she suck his blood? How did she know about the Sky Poison Pearl? And how did she enter the Sky Poison Pearl? Xiaoche could not think of an answer for any of these questions. He silently watched this girl for a long time and then stretched out a hand to lightly touch her upper lip. His fingertips immediately felt a tiny bit of warmth, a contrast to the earlier icy coldness. A weak breath could also be felt, evenly brushing against his fingertips. These were all signs of life. Little sister? Xiaoche called, shaking her body. No matter what the time, a woman's appearance was her strongest bargaining chip and most powerful weapon. If this girl wasn't as beautiful as a fairy, but instead horrendously ugly to a point that one would throw up for 3 days with just a glance, Xiaoche would absolutely, without hesitation, kick her out from the Sky Poison Pearl. But this girl was not only thoroughly shrouded in mystery, but had also just then bit his finger and forcefully sucked his blood, causing his body to break out in a cold sweat. She even strangely appeared within the sky poison pearl. However, when Xiaoche looked at her, rather than the previous sense of danger, he instead felt an undeniable sense of pity. This was because this girl was such a beauty, so beautiful that it was impossible for anyone to associate her with the word danger. Rather than a man's natural instinct, it was more appropriate to say that this would be countless men's most base of nature. Xiaoche shouted for a long time, but the girl did not respond at all. He stepped back a few paces and then silently gazed at her. This girl was definitely not normal, Xiaoche thought to himself. From the scars that were on her body, and her ripped-up clothing, it was easy to see that the poison on her body wasn't accidentally spilled, but rather forcefully applied by someone else. For this young girl, the most ordinary poison would have been enough to kill her, but her enemy instead used a poison so strong that it alarmed even him. The person able to use this kind of poison was definitely a very frightening person. What was even more frightening was that, even with her entire body covered in this poison, she still had not died yet. Then, what should he do with her? Should he just let her quietly sleep inside the sky poison pearl? Xiaoche pondered for a long time before silently leaving the sky poison pearl, leaving the girl inside. Although this girl had just then sucked his blood, it seemed to be an unconscious behavior. A girl this beautiful, how could she possibly be evil? If he took a step back to think about it, at such a young age, how could she become a threat? He also had no idea when she'll wake up. After purifying the poison on the ground to the best of his ability, Xiaoche started to leave. In the dead of night, he could only hear his own footsteps. When he was only about 100 steps from the Xiao clan's back wall, he suddenly saw a shadow walk directly towards him. His footsteps suddenly stopped as he looked ahead. Who was sneaking out here this late? The shadow in front of him also discovered him and stopped, vigilantly asking, "Who is it?" This voice caused Xiaoche to immediately stare, involuntarily saying, "Little aunt?" "Ah?" The shadow let out a quiet gasp, then quickly ran over. Coming closer, the moonlight revealed a dainty but charmingly elegant cheek. It was precisely Xiao Ling's. Upon clearly seeing Xiaoche, she opened her eyes wide. "Xiaoche? Why are you here?" Xiaoche scratched his head. "I couldn't sleep, so I came out to stargaze." "Stargaze? Tonight is your wedding night. You aren't with your Xiaoqinai consummating your marriage, but instead came out here to stargaze?" Xiao Ling's grabbed Xiaoche's arm, an angry pout on her face. "Don't you know that it's dangerous here? From time to time, profound beasts will come out, and when it's this dark, sometimes bandits will come here. What would happen if you carelessly ran into them? I have told you many times now, if I or your grandfather aren't by your side, you absolutely can't come out here, even if it's during the day. You actually did not listen to my words." As she talked, Xiao Ling's also angrily pinched Xiaoche's arm as punishment. "Ah, it hurts, it hurts." Xiaoche hurriedly yelled and then apologetically said, "Little aunt, I know I'm in the wrong. Next time I definitely won't dare." "You want there to be a next time?" Xiao Ling's glared at him with her beautiful eyes. "There definitely won't be a next time. If I want to come to the Ria Mountains in the future, I definitely will call for little aunt to come with me," Xiaoche solemnly vowed. With that said, if it weren't for his extra life's worth of memories, he definitely wouldn't dare to come out to this place alone at night. That's more like it. There's not allowed to be a next time. "Then little aunt, why did you come here? It's this late already?" Xiaoche asked, confused. Xiao Ling's voice lowered, her eyes appearing a bit hollow. "I don't know why, but I couldn't sleep tonight. Then I saw that the stars were really bright tonight, so I wanted to come to the Ria Mountains to take a look." Xiaoche looked up at the sky, then said with a smile, "In the past, little aunt and I would frequently sneak out here at night to enjoy the evening wind and look at the stars, and would frequently get caught and scolded by grandfather." Xiao Ling's responded, then quietly said, "I also thought about that, so I thought I'd see how it felt to come out by myself to stargaze, because in the future, I might not be able to stargaze with little Che." "Ah? Why?" "Stupid. Because little Che is married. In the future, you should be accompanying your wife, Kinayu, to bed at night, rather than coming out to enjoy the evening wind and stargaze." Xiao Ling's coldly glanced at him and then pouted for some reason. "That's not true. As long as little aunt is willing, no matter when, I would willingly come here with little aunt to stargaze." "See? Aren't I doing that with you right now?" Xiaoche said with a smile. "You're still saying that? Sneaking to the Ria Mountains during your wedding night, huh? You weren't forced out here by Xiaoqinai, were you?" Upon thinking of that, Xiao Ling's face filled with rage and she stamped her feet. "Pff, that's too excessive. I'm going to go find her. You don't need to worry about her." Xiaoche grabbed Xiao Ling's hand. "I wasn't forced out here by her. I came out by myself. Maybe I just carelessly predicted that I'd meet little aunt here. Come on, let's go to that place." Leading Xiao Ling's by the hand, Xiaoche jogged through the cool evening wind towards that familiar place. This was a small hilltop covered by soft and tender grass. Xiaoche and Xiao Ling's leaned against each other shoulder to shoulder, bailing in the occasional evening wind, their hearts at peace. "I thought that after little Che got married, I would lose a large part of you. Xiaoqinai is so beautiful, better than me in every aspect. I was afraid that once you had her, you would always stay at her side, leaving me with less and less time with you." Looking at the night sky, Xiao Ling's eyes overflowed with a wavering light that was even brighter than the stars. "Little aunt really didn't believe my words at all." Xiaoche bitterly replied, "I clearly said this morning that in my heart, 100 Xiaoqinai won't compare to little aunt. Little aunt forced me wait no, promised with me. I firmly remember, and will definitely willingly comply. After I marry Xiaoqinai, I won't forget about little aunt just because I have a wife. I'll spend the same amount of time with little aunt like before. I will listen to little aunt's calls and would arrive as soon as I'm called just like before." And lastly, although Xiaokinayu is now my wife, in my heart, she definitely won't outweigh little aunt. I guarantee that I remembered every word right. Xiao Lingxi had a dumbfounded expression on her face and the look in her eyes blurred. I know that was a bit excessive. I was just playing around. You really kept it in your heart all along? Of course. Xiaoche nodded without hesitation. Because little aunt and grandfather are the most important people in my life. Other people can't compare. Little aunt, I promise you, even though I'm now married, you won't ever lose me, just like I hope to never lose you. Xiao Lingxi happily smiled, her hands hugging Xiaoche's arm. She rested her head on his shoulder. As expected, my little Che is the most well-behaved, most obedient. A dark cloud floated through the sky, temporarily blocking the full moon, immediately dimming the surrounding lighting. Now that I think about it, it's been a long time now. It seems like it's been quite a few months since we came out here to stargaze together. When we were little, whether it was winter or summer, we would frequently sneak out here. I remember one winter night, at this very spot. Of course the sky was filled with many stars. We watched for a long time, then accidentally fell asleep against each other. Turns out that it unexpected snowed that night, and we were frozen while sleeping. When father found us, we had already become two little snowmen. Afterwards, we only recovered after staying next to the stove for 2 days and drinking a lot of bitter medicine. Father was really angry, but was reluctant to spank me, not to mention you. So after we got better, he made us shovel a large patch of snow as punishment. Xiaoche continued with a smile, and then, we only shoveled for a bit before we started playing in the snow. We even made a big snowman that really looked like grandfather. He didn't know whether he should laugh or cry. Once he started laughing, he completely forgot about our punishment. Father was always like that. He usually looks really fierce, but he could never bring himself to spank us even once and would only put on a show to scare us. No matter what, as long as we threw even a small tantrum, he would obediently listen to us. Xiao Lingxi's face was full of warm laughter. One time wasn't like that. Xiaoche's smile became vague. On my 12th birthday, when you were 11, grandfather got you a small courtyard, and forbid you from sleeping together with me in the future. I remember you would beg grandfather every day, crying and shouting, and even angrily stopped eating. But grandfather was extremely unyielding. No matter what, he wouldn't let you sleep in the same bed with me. As time passed by, you could only obediently follow his order. That's because I was really young, and had a lot of things that I didn't understand. Xiao Lingxi lightly pinched Xiaoche's shoulder. Some girl things I only learned after growing up. What things? Xiaoche widely opened his eyes, his face full of suspicion. That boys and girls can't sleep together after they grow up. I can't believe you didn't know. Thinking about what had happened before, Xiao Lingxi added another sentence. Also, they can't randomly kiss like when they were little. So it's like that. Xiaoche glanced at Xiao Lingxi's lovely cheek, dyed jade under the bright and beautiful starlight. He quietly leaned closer. But, I always want to kiss you. What should I do? Then marry me. Xiao Lingxi replied with a proud face, her pink cheeks raising slightly. If you weren't my little aunt, I would definitely marry you, Xiaoche said without thinking. After saying that, Xiaoche immediately stared blankly ahead. Xiao Lingxi's expression also froze as she vacantly stared at him as if they had both been struck dumb. Chapter 13, The Dangerous Haze. Little aunt, why are you looking at me with such a strange expression? Suddenly realizing that the atmosphere had become a bit awkward, Xiaoche held his breath for a while before cautiously asking. Only then did Xiao Lingxi's beautiful eyes, which had a dazed look for a long time, tremble slightly. She hastily rested her gaze away and lowered her head, softly spitting out. Aren't you afraid that your wife Kinayu will hear those words that you said just now? Xiaoche put on a show of looking around, and then innocently said, it doesn't seem like there's anyone around us, so what are you afraid of? But even if she did hear me, I still don't have anything to fear. You did not know that she actually doesn't sincerely want to marry me, and I also do not really want to be married to her. If it was little aunt though, don't keep talking. Xiao Lingxi reached out her hand and forcefully pressed them against his lips, firmly sealing his next words. Only after a long time did she release him, once again resting her body against Xiaoche's shoulder, peacefully saying, Little Che, even though I'm younger than you by a year, I am truly, without a doubt, your little aunt. There are some words that you can say to other girls, that you cannot say to me in this lifetime. You cannot say them, I know in your heart. You really think like this, but that's enough. At the last two sentences, Xiao Lingxi's voice had become very, very quiet. Within her muttering contained a sense of bitterness and sadness that would break the heart of anyone listening. Xiaoche's heart also heavily shook. He didn't say anything else, closed his eyes, and peacefully listened to the breathing and heartbeat of the girl beside him. When I was young, I was thin, dark, and short. Everyone called me an ugly duckling and always made fun of me. Bullied me. Xiao Lingxi snuggled against him, a dreamy voice escaping from her mouth. Only you would play with me. When someone bullied me, little Che would always rush up to fight with them and chase them away. You were always covered in cuts and bruises. The injuries you received at that time were all because of me. I got used to, and also enjoyed the feeling of little Che's protection. I believed that you would always be able to protect me this way. Xiao Lingxi's words reminded Xiaoche of the younger Xiao Lingxi. At that time, she truly was thin, dark, and short as she had just described, in every sense an ugly duckling. But because she was his little aunt, as a man, and also because he was older than her by a year, he would always, as if it was his mission, protect her with all his might. Who could have thought that this young woman would become very different from the little girl she once was? The once ugly duckling had transformed into today's beauty. Who knows how many young men of the Xiao clan would water at the mouth while longing for her. TL, idiom. This girl changed 18 times between childhood and her coming of age. Afterwards, little Che found out that his profound veins were deformed. I started to bitterly cultivate my profound strength right away because it was my turn to protect little Che. At that time, I thought whether it was little Che protecting me, or me protecting little Che, it was all one and the same. Either way we could be together. It wasn't until I slowly grew up that I understood that little Che would find a wife, and that I would also have to get married. By that time, we absolutely could not be as we were before. In addition, out of all the girls in the world, the only one little Che could not marry was me. Out of all the boys in the world, the only one that I could not marry was little Che, Xiao Che. After such a long time, I thought I had already completely accepted it. Today little Che got married. I should be really happy, but from morning to evening, it was like something had been stuffed in my heart. It was an indescribable pain. When I wanted to sleep, I couldn't fall asleep, no matter what I did. And little Che, when you said those kinds of words to me, I was somewhat happy, yet also really sad. What has happened to me? Xiao Che's stomach heavily lurched. While he still had not spoken at this time, he also had no idea what he should say. The dangerously hazy feeling between him and Xiao Ling's I was born a long time ago. When they became conscious of these kinds of dangerous, forbidden feelings, they still stayed together night and day, but never had even a bit of honest conversation about it. Rather, in their hearts, they blamed it on familial affection. The him without the lifetime of memories from Azure Cloud Continent had a cowardly and self-abased personality. Even until death, he would only try to escape the words that were impossible for him to say it out loud. Until those kinds of feelings were completely buried. Xiao Ling's I had not revealed her feelings, before today, even once. But the Xiao Che of today was not the Xiao Che from yesterday, and he said those earth-shattering words. In response, the indecisive Xiao Ling's I, at this isolated rear mountain hilltop in the depth of night, had let out her insuppressible feelings that she was forbidden to say. Xiao Che's heart began to beat at an erratic pace. As he inhaled this enrapturing girl's fragrance, he extended his right arm, lightly embracing Xiao Ling's I's body. Xiao Ling's I's body quivered slightly, but did not resist. She closed her eyes, quietly nestling on top of him with her entire body weight. The girl's lovely body was soft, as if without bones, was like warm, fragrant and soft jade. Her tender and satiny skin, though separated by a few layers of clothing, could still cause a person's soul shake. Xiao Che did not dare to embrace her too strongly, afraid that he would carelessly frighten or hurt her. However, immediately, he felt a pair of jade-like arms stealthily wrap around his back, taking the initiative to hold him closer and closer. A gust of faint, aromatic scent from an unknown place also entered his nose and then continued deep into his heart. Xiao Ling's I's willingness dissolved the hesitation in Xiao Che's heart. He extended his left arm to embrace her slender waist, but his mind suddenly froze. His arm's destination had accidentally changed. Upon landing, the feeling of a soft and warm lump was transmitted to his hand. Ah! Xiao Ling's I's mouth let out a moan. Xiao Che's mind was a mess. He immediately wanted to remove his hand, but Xiao Ling's I's soft, jade arm rested on top of the hand that had grabbed her first. At first, Xiao Che thought she wanted to swat away the hand that had accidentally violated her, but her jade-like hand only grasped his palm and rested there, not moving away, but not allowing him to flail about. Between these proudly towering breasts, Xiao Che still could clearly feel her wild heartbeat. The sound of Xiao Ling's I's breath was rough and heavy. A blush had long ago extended from her face to her snow-colored jade neck. She tightly closed her eyes and burrowed her head against his chest, completely motionless, as if trying hard to prove that she had already fallen asleep. Xiao Che also closed his eyes, completely still and completely silent, the two of them peacefully cuddling against each other. At this point, neither of them were willing to talk, for that would break this completely undisturbed dream. The night had grown deeper. When Xiao found them, they were still the same position, but had fallen into a deep sleep. Xiao had come out to look for Xiao Che. She originally thought he had just left to take a breath of fresh air. While he was out taking a breath of fresh air, she had also left the bed and laid out the blanket in that corner so that he could safely sleep there upon his return. But after waiting a long time, he still had not come back. Instead, from the direction of the earlier sounds, he seemed to have climbed over the wall toward the Xiao clan's rear mountains. With his weak profound strength at only the first level of the elementary profound realm, he had gone to the rear mountains for such a long time without coming back. In the middle of the night, Xiao finally was unable to hold back and came out to look for him, thus letting her witness this scene before her that caused her to stare dumbfoundedly. Today was her and Xiao Che's first day as a married couple. When he picked her up on the road to the Xiao clan, his tranquil attitude contained proudness. In the assembly hall, he held back his anger and hatred. In the bridal chamber, though he said all kinds of things and had a vulgar mouth, his expression and the look in his eyes unceasingly swayed fascinatingly between confusion, unwillingness and despondence. There was even a desolate loneliness that even she could not understand. But now, the him nestled together with Xiao Ling's I was sleeping with incomparable steadiness. The corner of his mouth was raised very slightly, clearly revealing a warm smile. His five senses were completely relaxed, his expression loose, tranquil and peaceful like a baby sleeping in his mother's bosom. Suddenly, an uncomfortable feeling floated up in Xiao heart. Of course, this didn't mean that she had any feelings towards Xiao Che, but she and Xiao Che had become a married couple. She had always believed that this marriage was just a formality for her, that the status as husband or wife were also mere titles, and that nothing could cause even the slightest ripple in her heart. However, in some things, the heart does not always follow a person's expectation. This was especially true for women, who, unless they had no heart, were more prone to sentimentality. After all, she and Xiao Che were already husband and wife. Although, in her thoughts, she didn't care at all about this kind of union, but the fact that Xiao Che was now her husband would still be distinctly imprinted in her subconscious. Since he was her husband, he should rightfully belong only to her. Instead, on his wedding night, he had cuddled with another woman until they had both fallen asleep. With such a warm and content expression on his face, her subconscious naturally would raise that kind of unfamiliar reaction. Even if the girl was his little aunt. This kind of uncomfortable feeling caused her usually tranquil and frozen fairy-like heart to twinge slightly. This sense of irritation allowed her to immediately wake up from her reverie, and quickly focus all her attention to still her heart. After a long while, the prickly feeling gradually disappeared and her heart had already completely cleared. She did not disturb Xiaoche and Xiaolingxai and, with light footsteps, left without a sound. After a short while, Xiaoqinai unhurriedly returned, with a crimson blanket in her arms. She carefully laid the blanket on top of Xiaoche and Xiaolingxai's bodies and once again left without a sound. When Xiaoche woke up, it was already dawn. Nestled against his chest, Xiaolingxai was still sleeping soundly, her sleeping posture charmingly sweet if one ignored the large glob of saliva on his chest. His sleep-fogged mind gradually cleared up, and bit by bit, last night's scene replayed in Xiaoche's head. Though his shoulder was numb and sore after an entire night, he didn't dare move even a little as to not disturb Xiaolingxai's peaceful sleep. It was also at this time that he suddenly discovered the crimson blanket covering his body. Well focused, he raised his hand to grab the blanket. Hello, uncontrollable roar spewed out of Xiaoche's mouth. This clearly was the blanket that was just prepared yesterday, and had been laid out on the bridal chamber bed. Xiaoche looked up in the direction of his own courtyard, his heart letting loose a groan on the wedding night. Not only was he not in the bridal chamber, but had also went out and slept with another woman, all night. His newlywed wife had also personally run over to deliver a blanket. This scenario was truly thrilling. Chapter 14, Letter from the Xiao Sect. It was early morning. The sky had barely begun to brighten when the master of the Xiao clan, Xiao Yunhai, was woken from his deep sleep by the sound of urgent knocking on his door. Clan master, are you awake? Xiao Yunhai opened his eyes, took a glance at the light outside and then asked, with a frown, this early in the morning, what happened? It's the Xiao Sect. Our letter from the Xiao Sect. From outside the door came this excited, trembling voice. What? The Xiao Sect? This master of the Xiao clan, one of the most powerful people in Floating Cloud City, sprung up from his bed as if stabbed by a dagger on the butt. He haphazardly threw on his clothes and, not even bothering to straighten his hair, threw open the door hastily, grabbing the Xiao clan disciple that was outside. He bellowed with wide eyes, you said the Xiao Sect? The Xiao Sect? Yes. It's definitely the Xiao Sect. That Xiao clan disciple swallowed with great difficulty, nodded with all his strength, and then presented the letter in his hand to Xiao Yunhai. This letter has the eagle seal of the Xiao Sect. In this Blue Wind Empire, no one would dare to forge the Xiao Sect's insignia. As soon as he saw the Skyhawk seal on the letter, Xiao Yunhai's entire body shook. He fiercely grabbed the letter, then, with violently shaking hands, quickly but carefully tore it open to reveal the paper within. Although the Xiao Sect's name had only one word of difference if compared to his Xiao clan, that one word was like the difference between the clouds and mud. The Xiao clan barely counted as the leading presence in Floating Cloud City, but on the profound sky continent as a whole, it was simply a nameless existence. However, the Xiao Sect is one of the 4 strongest sects in the Blue Wind Empire. They have the same level of prestige as the Heavenly Sword Villa, Frozen Cloud Asgard, and the Burning Heaven clan. They were an existence that the Xiao clan could not even hope to look up to. To put it bluntly, a useless servant in the Xiao Sect would not even find it necessary to respect the Xiao clan's master. However, there was a connection between the Xiao clan and the Xiao Sect. That is because the person that founded Floating Cloud City's Xiao clan 160 years ago, Xiao Bili, was at the time a person from the Xiao Sect. To be more precise, he was an abandoned disciple, and, as rumor had it, the son of one of the elders at the time. However, Xiao Bili was the result of that elder raping one of the Xiao Sect's serving girls while drunk. Since childhood, his appearance was ordinary and his talent was lacking. Furthermore, he attracted a large amount of gossip, causing that elder a great amount of displeasure. Upon reaching adulthood, his profound strength was the lowest among all of his peers. To let him remain at the Xiao Sect would only cause the elder more humiliation, so he found an opportunity to send him to that piece of shit place, the rural Floating Cloud City, and helped him establish the Xiao clan. From then on he paid no more attention to Xiao Bili and cut off all contact between them and the Xiao Sect. But Xiao Bili nevertheless was born in the proud Xiao Sect. He spent his entire life painstakingly cultivating his profound strength, hoping to gain recognition, and thus one day earn their approval and one day return to Xiao Sect. After he died, this desire was passed down through the Xiao clan from one generation to the next, and became ultimate goal of every generation of the Xiao clan. Especially among each generation's clan master, all without exception hoped that they could rely on the tiny bit of Xiao Sect blood in them to establish a relationship, no matter how fragile, with the Xiao Sect. But after all these years, the Xiao clan never produced a person that could fulfill this wish. Talk of the Xiao Sect to them was like that of the Celestial Palace, something that they couldn't even hope to reach. However, today, the Xiao Sect had taken the initiative to send a letter. This couldn't fail to send Xiao Yunhai into joyful hysteria, the excitement making him feel as if he was in a dream. After reading the letter's contents word by word, Xiao Yunhai's face was completely red, his breathing erratic. He pointed a trembling finger outside, hoarsely saying, quickly inform the elders to immediately gather at the main hall. Tell them we need to discuss big news concerning the future of our Xiao clan. Go quick. Ah yes. The Xiao clan disciple immediately answered and ran off in a panic. Xiaoche carefully opened the door, crimson blanket in hand, only to find that Xiaoqinai was already sitting beside the bed, awake and dressed. Her beautiful eyes that were as calm as water, watched him without even a tiny ripple. Xiaoche immediately tossed the blanket on the table. With a face not red and a heart not racing, He calmly asked, "Wife, you're up so early. Did you sleep well last night? You're not going to first tell me where you went last night?" Xiaoqinyu faintly asked, her beautiful eyes narrowing slightly. "No need." Xiaoqi stretched his body and then started to straighten his hair using the mirror, "because I know you definitely aren't interested." Xiaoqinyu, although he fell asleep at the rear mountains with Xiao Lingxi last night, when he woke up, his mood was unusually good. After he straightened out his clothes and hair slightly, returning to his pretty boy image, Xiaoqi stood up to leave and said, "Let's go. It's the morning of the first day. We have to go pay our respects to grandfather. This you won't refuse, right?" Xiaoqinyu stood without a word and stepped out of the door ahead of him. Xiaoqi loosened his shoulders and quickly followed her out. Xiao Lai woke up early every day, and today was no exception. Upon entering Xiao Lai's courtyard, the first thing they saw was him watering his flowers and plants. As he saw Xiaoqi and Xiaoqinyu enter, he gently smiled. "You came." Under Xiao Lai's attentive gaze, Xiaoqi quickly reached out and held Xiaoqinyu's small hand in his own. Xiaoqinyu's hand was soft and smooth, yet also cool to the touch, perhaps because she was trained in the frozen cloud arts. Xiaoqinyu's entire body stiffened. Right before she was about to yank her hand free from Xiaoqi, she noticed Xiao Lai's gaze, and had no choice but to quietly tolerate it. She let Xiaoqi walk to Xiao Lai with her, hand in hand. Her father was always very respectful towards Xiao Lai and she was no different. In front of just Xiaoqi, she could show him not a single bit of affection, but if she were to shake off Xiaoqi's hand in front of Xiao Lai, then she can only imagine how ugly his face would become. "This despicable scoundrel, grandfather, you're up so early today again." Xiaoqi led Xiaoqinyu over and naturally greeted Xiao Li with the courtesy of a junior. Qinyu pays her respects to grandfather. Qinyu lightly curtsied, her posture gentle and dignified. The fact that it was her first time being led by the hand, and used by such underhanded methods, left her both angry and helpless. If it weren't for the fact that her profound strength would be detected by this elderly man at the apex of the spirit profound realm, she would have definitely used the frozen cloud arts to freeze Xiaoqi until he grimaced. "Haha, you two also woke up very early." Seeing Xiaoqi and Xiaoqinyu's intimate appearance, Xiaoqi's face revealed a cheerful expression. Qinyu, even though the age of 16 is a bit early to get married, it also set a part of my heart at ease. Qinyu, you should already know about Chea's condition. Frankly speaking, this wedding honestly was not fair to you. But our family will spare no expense to make it up to you. Right now, my greatest wish is to see the two of you peacefully live your lives. Xiaoqinyu had not managed to reply before Xiaoqi hurriedly said, "Grandfather, don't say that. I, Xiaoqi, am your grandson. There isn't a woman under heaven that I'm not fit for. Where did we wrong her? After joining the family, of course she'd come pay her respects to grandfather and then carefully take care of me as the days pass. If she doesn't do it right, then I'll divorce her and find a better wife. Don't you agree, Qinyu my wife?" If it weren't for the fact that Xiao Lai was standing right in front of them, Xiaoqinyu would definitely have forever frozen Xiaoqi's mouth shut with a gust of the frozen cloud fairy's secret arts. Ha 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 ha. Xiao Lai burst into laughter, helplessly shaking his head. He looked at Xiaoqi with a pampering look. "Oh you, Qinyu had only just joined the family and you're already bullying her like this. Qinyu, don't listen to his nonsense. This brat, hasn't had one honest mouth since he was young. You two should not have eaten this early right? Knowing that the two of you would come, old Hong already had the kitchen send over breakfast. Come, let's eat together." "Yes grandfather, that's right. Should we call for little aunt to come as well? She had always loved to sleep since she was young. Since it's still early, let's not bother her." The dining table inside the house was indeed already laden with 3 just cooked portions of breakfast. Xiaoqi never let go of her hand and dragged Xiaoqinyu, who was with great efforts trying to look natural, to sit shoulder by shoulder on one side of the table. Xiao Lai began to take his seat opposite them. He had only touched his seat when the sound of hurried footsteps came from outside, accompanied by a coarse voice. "Fifth elder. Is the 5th elder here? What is it?" Xiao Lai stood up and slightly wrinkled his brow. Clan Master's order. All elders are to immediately go to the main hall to discuss news concerning the future of the Xiao clan. You must immediately go. Xiao Lai stood up, grabbed the jacket offered to him by Xiao Hong and then spoke to Xiaoqi and Xiaoqinyu. "Looks like it's an emergency. You two eat first. There's no need to wait for me." There wasn't a single time in Xiao Lai's memory wherein such urgent summon came so early in the morning. He draped his jacket over his body, then quickly left. Xiao Lai had only just left, but Xiaoqi's hand left Xiaoqinyu's as fast as lightning. His body also jumped backwards with a whoosh as his eyebrows slanted slightly. He said with a grim face, "Qinyu my wife, you are very clever, so you should definitely understand that the reason I held your hand was to give grandfather some peace of mind. I definitely don't have any other intentions. Even though I didn't get your approval beforehand, you definitely wouldn't lash out in anger, right?" Xiaoqinyu's expression had indeed become a bit icy. She coldly spoke, "If you dare to randomly touch my body again, then I won't be this polite anymore. Hey, you wouldn't go that far, right?" Xiaoqi watched her with wide eyes and a depressed look on his face. "I only held your hand and you're already so angry. We are still a genuine couple. Even if you're only married me to repay a debt of gratitude, we're still husband and wife. Since we're a married couple, it's normal for me to touch everywhere, not to mention the hand. No, rather, that's how it's supposed to be. You've been married to me less than a day and yet have always been cold and indifferent. You wouldn't even let me sleep on the same bed on the wedding night. Now even holding your hand causes you to get so angry." Sobs. "What kind of wife did I marry? It's practically even worse than taking an empress for a wife." Xiaoqi's temperament was more and more giving Xiaoqinyu a feeling of helplessness. The first time she saw him, she felt that he was cold and proud. Gradually, she also felt that his disposition was not ordinary, and even held a touch of mystery. Many times, he gave her the feeling that this wasn't in fact a 16-year-old, but rather an adult man with many years of experience save for his uncouth nature that would be revealed whenever he wasn't careful. And now, even though he clearly had shamelessly violated her, he still acted as if he had done no wrong. Instead, like a little brat, he brazenly complained, firmly turning her from the victim to the villain. For a moment, she was dumbfounded and didn't know whether she should laugh or cry. Even the anger in her chest had unwittingly dissipated by a large amount. "Forget it, let's sit and eat," Xia Kinayu said powerlessly. "In other words, my wife Kinayu isn't angry anymore? Hee, that's more like an obedient wife. Come, let's eat a lot." Xiaoche immediately climbed across the table and then sat back down, next to Xia Kinayu, passing the green bean cake on his plate to hers. Xia Kinayu began to suspect that the request she had made to her teacher to stay by his side for 1 month was both an erroneous and dangerous decision. Chapter 15, Xiao Yulong's probing. Only after Xiaoche and Xia Kinayu finished eating breakfast did Xiao Lai return, an unprecedentedly heavy look written on his face, along with a bit of shock that had yet to completely disperse. "Grandfather, what happened?" Xiaoche promptly stood up and asked. "A major event. For the Xiao clan, this is an enormous matter," Xiao Lai said, yet his furrowed brow loosened. "But, it shouldn't have much to do with us. An enormous matter? What kind of matter is it?" Xiaoche was even more astonished. "It's the Xiao sect." "The Xiao sect?" This time, not only Xiaoche, but even Xia Kinayu raised an eyebrow. About half an hour ago, the clan master received a letter from the Xiao sect. The letter said that the Xiao sect will immediately send a group of people here. Not only that, but the leader of that group is the Xiao sect's current sect master Xiao Jushin's youngest son. Xiao Lai said slowly. This news caused Xiaoche to fall quiet for a long while before saying, "If that's true, then something doesn't make sense. While our Xiao clan did come from the Xiao sect 160 years ago, the Xiao sect has always treated us with contemptuous disgust. With more than 100 years of separation, there couldn't be anyone in the Xiao sect that would care about our tiny Xiao clan. Why would they suddenly send people here? But to say that they're plotting something the Xiao sect's influence covers the sky, why would they need to plot against us? To say that they're granting us a favor, is even more impossible." Xiao Lai shook his head and said, "Of course there's a reason. Our Xiao clan's founding ancestor, Xiao Bili, was secretly expelled from the Xiao sect because his talent was just too poor. But his father was, at the time, the Xiao sect's enforcement hall's elder, Xiao Zheng. Not long ago, Xiao Zheng died. In the year before he died, his thoughts no longer were of chasing power and fame, but rather that he still had Xiao Bili as a son. After 100 years without contact, his heart was ashamed. He left behind a dying wish, hoping that the Xiao sect could, after his death, find Xiao Bili's descendants and from their youth select the most talented candidate to take back to the Xiao sect to cultivate. This also serves as an apology for the disregard that he had shown Xiao Bili and the subsequent expulsion. An ordinary person can't live to be over 100. But when one's profound strength reaches a certain point, living for a few hundred years wasn't out of the question. It's said that once one breaks through to the Emperor Profound realm, their life expectancy would span thousands of years. After listening to Xiao Lai's words, Xiaoche first pondered and then felt relieved. No wonder the Xiao sect would suddenly voluntarily send people to visit. Turns out it was this kind of thing. It seemed that the deceased Xiao Zheng still had some status among the Xiao sect, so the Xiao sect honored his final wish. He also realized why Xiao Lai said that this had nothing to do with them. Select the most talented candidate to take back to the Xiao sect to cultivate. There was no way this most talented candidate any relation with Xiaoche. However, it was obvious that the inner thoughts of the other elders, after hearing this news, should be surging greatly. To be taken back to the Xiao sect to cultivate? What kind of idea was that? If any of their sons or grandsons were picked and taken back to the Xiao sect, then it would be like an earthworm rising from the mud to become a golden dragon floating between the clouds overnight. All of their relatives would take flight behind them. They would be able to arrogantly walk without fear of consequence not only among the Xiao clan, but among all the floating cloud city. Anyone who dares to disagree, if told Xiao sect those two words, even the city governor wouldn't dare to talk back. TL literally means wouldn't dare to fart half a fart. This obviously doesn't translate well. Xiao Lai's expression looked to be truly peaceful, but the disappointment that was hidden with great effort still couldn't escape Xiaoche's eyes. Within the Xiao clan, there wasn't anyone who didn't have the desire to go to the Xiao sect. Even the him of today was like this. And with the Xiao sect coming there, this was no doubt the best opportunity to get close to them, because now was when they can directly interact with the Xiao sect's people. The other Xiao clan members all possessed that sliver of hope. Only Xiao Lai did not even dare to hope, because there's no way that Xiaoche would be the person that the Xiao sect would pick. Xiaoche opened his mouth to say something to comfort his grandfather, but after mulling for a long time, he couldn't think of a single word to say. His profound veins condition was clearly well known. Even if he said something pleasing to the ears, what was the use? Even though this does not have anything to do with us, that can also be a good thing. The Xiao sect is as large as the sky. Even if we did go there, we'd be among the lowest-ranked people. How can it compare to freely and peacefully being on top in floating cloud city? Xiao Lai easily laughed, sitting at the dining table. Come, help your grandfather finish breakfast. After coming out of Xiao Lai's courtyard, Xiaoche immediately realized that the entire Xiao clan's atmosphere had distinctively changed. Normally at this time, there would be quite a few people doing their morning training. However, now, as far as the eye can see, there were only scattered shadows, most of them moving with hurried footsteps and faces full of excitement. It looks like everyone thinks they can climb onto the high branch that is the Xiao sect, but is leaping to the heavens in one step really a good thing? No one is thinking about what would happen if they truly did enter the Xiao sect. I guess that they'd just be the lowliest of messengers. Xiaoche said cynically. Jealous? Xiaokinayu expressionlessly asked. Definitely not. As soon as he said that, Xiaoche realized that the Xiaokinayu by his side was a disciple of the frozen clouders kid, and in no way inferior to the Xiao sect. He only curled his lips and said, "You aren't the same as them, forget it, pretend like I didn't say anything." Xiaokinayu no longer minded him and stepped forward. Although it was a really slow step, her body still moved 7 or 8 body widths away. Another step, and she was even further from Xiaoche, leaving him behind. Xiaoche's footsteps stopped, entirely focusing on this gracefully stepping, phantom-like Xiaokinayu. He muttered, "Don't tell me this is the legendary frozen clouderskid's frozen snow dance steps." This woman's profound strength was not that simple. It should not merely be at the elementary profound realm's 10th level. Yo. If it isn't brother Xiaoche? A voice called from the right. Xiaoche turned his head and saw Xiaoyang walking towards him. This Xiaoyang normally had his nose pointing at the sky in front of him and treated him with complete disdain. For him to voluntarily greet him was definitely an unusual first time. "Brother Xiaoyang, you're up early." Xiaoche turned towards him and greeted good-naturedly. "What a coincidence, I was just about to go look for you, but who knew that I'd run into you here?" Xiaoyang walked over while laughing. "Brother Xiaoyang needed to find me for something?" Xiaoche asked, his face full of astonishment. Xiaoyang nodded. "It's actually Big Brother Yulong who had me come call you. He said that you're the youngest among us, but the first to get married. As your fellow clanmate, he wanted to hold a little celebration for you, no matter what. Plus, there were too many people at the wedding yesterday, so it was hard to enjoy the wine. It's best to drink a little and eat a little this morning. How about it? Do you have time?" Inviting him to drink this early in the morning, it turns out that Xiao Yulong's patience was really only just average. Xiaoche's sneered in his heart. He was perfectly aware of the reason why Xiao Yulong came to find him. At that moment, his face revealed an overwhelmed expression, and he emotionally replied, "Is it really Brother Yulong calling for me? Of course there's time. Since it's Brother Yulong calling for me, how could I not have time? Then do we go now?" Xiaoche's expression caused Xiaoyang to secretly sneer in disdain. He nodded. "Of course, let's go." Xiao Yulong's courtyard was bigger than Xiaoche's by about 4 or 5 times. Not only was it overwhelmingly luxurious, but it also had a dedicated serving girl. Slightly north of the courtyard center sat a square pavilion. The table inside was laden with food and wine. Xiao Yulong raised a wine cup with a warm smile on his face. "Little brother Xiaoche, you married our floating cloud city's #1 jewel. Once again, I congratulate you. As your big brother, I'll have to try harder from now on. Thank you Brother Yulong." Xiaoche also hurried raised his wine cup, his face red from excitement. "Actually regarding that, my marriage is not a big deal at all. Really, it should be me congratulating Brother Yulong." "Oh?" Xiao Yulong's face revealed his suspicion. He asked with a smile, "Congratulating me? I don't understand." Xiaoche replied with a serious face, "It can't be that Brother Yulong doesn't know about the group coming from the Xiao sect whom will select one the most talented youth to take back with them. In this generation of our Xiao clan, as far as talent, position, looks, and character, who could compare with Brother Yulong? So this time, Brother Yulong will definitely be the one taken back to the Xiao sect. It's an enormously happy event. Right. That's right, Brother Yulong will definitely be selected to go to the Xiao sect this time. With Big Brother here, other people shouldn't even think about it," Xiaoyang also promptly said. His attitude within the Xiao clan was only middling high. On this matter, knowing his chances, he didn't dare to have any ideas. The person with the best chance in the Xiao clan was none other than Xiao Yulong. Since he had spent the last few years following Xiao Yulong around, if Xiao Yulong enters the Xiao sect, it could only benefit him. He began to feel that these few years spent fawning on Xiao Yulong was indeed the right decision. Wearing a modest expression, Xiao Yulong shook his head. "You guys praise me too much. Our Xiao clan has many outstanding brothers and sisters. While I can be considered the best as far as profound strength goes, when it comes down to my qualification, I can't say for certain. But I will try my best for this. Come, Brother Xiaoche, a toast to yesterday's happiness." While his words were very carefree, hidden in the depths of Xiao Yulong's eyes was a glowing fanaticism greater than anyone else's. After downing a cup of wine, Xiaoche's face flushed. At this time, Xiaoyang drew his face close, and asked with a face full of smiles, "Brother Xiaoche, the woman you married yesterday is truly the most beautiful woman in our floating cloud city. Your luck with women is the envy of all of us brothers. The taste from the bridal chamber last night must be equally pleasurable, right?" Xiao Yulong raised his wine cup, a smiling expression on his face, but his gaze was dead set on Xiaoche's face and eyes, prepared to see what expression he would reveal. However, as soon as Xiaoyang finished his question, Xiaoche's eyes glowed brightly, his face revealing a wanton smile understandable by all men. He leaned his head closer to Xiaoyang and lowered his voice, smiling, "Absolutely. Hey brother Xiaoyang, I'll let you know, all women are the same. Xiaokinayu normally looks like a proud peacock, but in bed, she's an absolute slut. Ah, her moaning, her flavor, definitely was pleasurable. Hey. Xiaoche narrowed his eyes as he talked, his entire face red with intoxication. Ping. The wine cup in Xiao Yulong's hand was crushed into pieces, scattering all over the table. Chapter 16, Young Master Xiao, Looking for Death. Brother Yulong? What's wrong? Xiaoche quickly stood up with an alarmed look. Xiao Yulong revealed a completely stiff and ugly smile as he shook off the pieces of the broken wine cup from his hand. It's nothing. I wasn't careful and lost control of my strength. Xiao Yang's expression wasn't better than Xiao Yulong's by much. He looked like someone who had just eaten a dead insect. After hearing Xiao Yulong's words, he quickly interrupted. I know, it's definitely because Big Brother had another breakthrough in his profound strength. Right after you make a breakthrough, the growth of the profound strength will cause it to occasionally go out of control. Then it's like that. Xiao Che seemed to have suddenly realized, then quickly said, Big Brother Yulong unexpected had another breakthrough, congratulations. I heard that Brother Yulong advanced to the third level of the nascent profound realm 3 months ago. It's only been 3 months, and you actually had another breakthrough. It's not for nothing that you're the ace of our generation. It seems like besides Brother Yulong, there's no one else that the Xiao sect could pick. Xiao Yulong's face twitched. He stood up, strongly suppressing his heart's turmoil and spoke with a forced smile. Brother Xiao Che is flattering me. But it's true that I just had a breakthrough, and that my profound strength is a bit unstable. I must immediately stabilize it and can no longer continue to entertain you. No problem, no problem. Xiao Che quickly waved his hand, nodding with understanding. Of course Brother Yulong stabilizing his profound strength is more important then, I won't continue to bother Brother Yulong. Thanks you for today's invitation and hospitality. After a few days, when Brother Yulong is selected by the Xiao sect, I'll definitely be the first to congratulate you. After saying that, Xiao Che very politely left. Xiao Yang also pretended to leave with him, but after Xiao Che was far away, he quickly turned around and rushed back. As soon as he entered the door, he could see Xiao Yulong's gloomy and frightening expression. Big Brother about this thing. Seeing Xiao Yulong's expression, Xiao Yang fiercely swallowed a mouthful of saliva and approached with trepidation. Ah! Xiao Yulong let out a bellow of rage as if he was insane. He swept all of the wine and teacups off of the table. After everything broke into pieces, he gave a ferocious kick, knocking over the stone table. His hands were clenched tight, his breath heavy with panting, and his eyes burned with flames of jealousy and hatred. An incomparably low voice escaped from his mouth. Didn't you tell me Xia Qinyu would never let Xiao Che, that waste of a person, touch her? Exclamation mark. Xiao Yulong very rarely went out of control. His current state caused Xiao Yang's scalp to go numb and his back cold. He said in a panic, it must be Xiao Che, that fellow making things up. Xia Qinyu couldn't possibly have fallen for that fellow. Bullshit. Xiao Yulong said with a low roar. Is there anything about that piece of waste, Xiao Che, that I don't know? You think he can lie to my face? What kind of person do you think I am? Xiao Yulong had a considerable amount of shrewdness and vision. He has known Xiao Che for 16 years, and believed that he knew him like the back of his own hand. He firmly believed that when it comes to this lacking profound strength, cowardly, and self-abased person, no change of his mood could escape from his eyes. When Xiao Yang had asked him that question just now, whether it was the look in his eyes, his expression, or his subconscious behavior, none of them had any signs of guile. Xia Qinyu was the woman that he has vowed to definitely obtain. One reason why he allowed them to marry was because he was helpless to stop it. The other was that he was convinced that even if Xia Qinyu married Xia Che, she would never give herself to him wholly. Instead, it would make things more convenient for himself. But he had never thought that on the second day of getting married, the result would be that Xia Qinyu had already been sampled by Xiao Che. The anger in his heart right now, along with his jealousy and resentment, was almost enough to cause his chest to burst. Xiao Yang stood there with his neck shrunk back, not daring to even breath loudly. In the past, Xiao Yulong was slated to become the next clan master. He was always very loyal in front of him. Now that Xiao Yulong was most likely going to be a member of the Xiao sect, he even more so didn't dare to oppose him. After a long while, Xiao Yulong was still panting heavily. It was obvious how large of a blow this was to him. He suddenly said in a deep voice, where did Xiao Che go after leaving this place? He went to the east courtyard. He might be going to the kitchen area, Xiao Yan replied with great care. Xiao Yulong angled his eyebrows, a dark cloud hanging over his features. He muttered under his breath, I always thought that Xia Qinyu had an exceptionally gorgeous complexion and talent, and also a dignity and aloofness that other women couldn't compare to. I didn't expect that even the most despised of the Xiao clan members could catch her interest. Xiao Yulong let out a cold snort and with a fierce shake of his arms, walked towards the courtyard's exterior. Just as Xiao Yang was about to catch up, he suddenly realized where he wanted to go and immediately stopped obediently. Afterwards, he slowly wiped the cold sweat off of his forehead. Xiao Che left Xiao Yulong's courtyard and walked towards the kitchen at a normal gait to pick up some breakfast. Afterwards, he leisurely walked towards Xiao Lingzai's courtyard. If anyone got close, they would be able to hear him talking to himself. Xiao Yulong should be hurrying over to my place, right? Oh, I wonder if my wife Qinyu will break his leg. Or both legs, or 3 legs. Third leg is his D. He reached Xiao Lingzai's courtyard, but the door was securely closed. Xiao Che knocked on the door. Little aunt, I brought a light breakfast. The door opened and Xiao Che walked in, shutting the door shut with a bang. Xiao Lingzai was sprawled on the table, her hands resting below her chin, and her eyelids drooping, a thoroughly weak and dispirited appearance. Xiao Che placed the light breakfast on the table, then waved his hand in front of her face a few times. Didn't sleep well last night? Upon hearing Xiao Che mention last night, Xiao Lingzai let out a low whimpering noise and buried her entire face in her palms. You can still talk about last night. Xia Qinyu came to deliver a blanket. She must have seen everything. What to do? I'm too ashamed to see anyone. Sob. It's not that bad, is it? Xiao Che rubbed his forehead, then sat at her side. He said with a smile, rest easy. You're my little aunt. What's wrong with us sleeping while snuggling together? It's exactly because I'm your little aunt Xiao Lingxi shook her head as if she was being driven mad. Also all of last night, your hand was on my sob. She must have seen everything. What should I do if she tells someone? What should I do? Relax. She definitely won't tell anyone else. Besides, you're my little aunt. What's the big deal if, when going to sleep, I accidentally touched your breast? Xiao Che very calmly stated. You aren't allowed to talk anymore. Xiao Lingxi shook her head even harder, her entire cheek blushing. The reason why she acted that way last night must have been because they were alone, in the dark, and her heart was in a state of confusion. Thinking back now, she even more so believed that she must have been insane at that time. I'm 100% sure. Even if she did see, she absolutely won't tell anyone. To begin with, she wouldn't think in the direction that you're thinking of. Alright, come quickly eat breakfast or it'll get cold. Xiao Che comforted her with a light laugh. When thinking about the same thing, a woman's heart was after all, different from a man's. Oh, Xiao Lingxi at long last lifted her face from her palms and began to tearily eat the breakfast that Xiao Che brought. As Xiao Che expected, Xiao Yulong headed straight towards his courtyard as soon as he left. As soon as he entered, he spotted Xia Qinyu currently standing in the center of the courtyard. Xia Qinyu calmly stood under the pomegranate tree in the center of the courtyard with her arms raised high. Her expression was calm and serious. Clearly she was quietly cultivating her profound strength. Her long hair naturally spilled over her shoulders, soft and glossy under the morning light. On her lovely face were two black thin and curvy eyebrows, similar to a pair of crescent moons. Her two tranquil pupils, clear like crystals, were like the radiance of a flowing dream. Her entire body was covered by a red dress, her faintly discernible curves slim and beautiful, a contrast to the creamy, white jade-like skin. This was Xiao Yulong's first time seeing Xia Qinyu's full peerless magnificence up close and personal like this. In that instant, he was thoroughly stupefied on the spot, all of his attention drawn to this exceedingly beautiful scene in front of his eyes. The rest of the world, in a blink of an eye, lost its color. Upon noticing Xiao Yulong's arrival, Xia Qinyu's posture didn't change at all. Her eyes continued to gaze ahead while a calm voice left her mouth. Xiao Che is not here. Her voice was cold and indifferent, yet was as sweet and comforting as that of a fairy. Xiao Yulong only then returned to his senses, but there was no way to suppress the stunned and infatuated look in his eyes. He immediately adjusted himself to his best mode and bowed slightly towards Xia Qinyu, saying with a smile, "Hello Lady Xia. I am Xiao Yulong, Xiao Che's elder brother." Xia Qinyu was not an excessively cold and haughty person. The other person's mild language and respectful posture and voice caused her to glance at him. Also, it's not as if she hadn't heard of the name Xiao Yulong. After all, he is the son of this generation's Xiao clan's clan master. Just as she was glancing at him, preparing to politely respond, she saw the overwhelming infatuation in Xiao Yulong's eyes and his obscene desires. Immediately, her fine eyebrows twitched. Her trace of goodwill to the previous polite behavior and refined appearance of this man turned into disgust in a flash. Even though Xiao Che would frequently cause her heart to erupt into anger with his vulgar mouth and uncouth hands, but at the very least, she never saw any trace of obscene desires in his eyes. But this Xiao Yulong on the other hand, Xia Qinyu's dull voice suddenly contained a hint of coldness. Her words became even more to the point. Xiao Che is not here. In the face of Xia Qinyu's clear coldness, Xiao Yulong seemed to be in disbelief. He nodded his head, saying, "That's really too bad. However, I've heard many good things about Lady Xia. To be able to see Lady Xia makes this trip worth it." As he spoke, Xiao Yulong's movements, facial expression, look, and voice all changed to the most perfect state, showing off his own charm. He was confident that he was thousands of times stronger than Xiao Che. If Xia Qinyu can fall for even Xiao Che, how could she resist him once he puts forward the effort? "I'm currently cultivating, forgive me for not being able to receive visitors." Xia Qinyu's eyes were tranquil, but her voice already carrying a tinge of annoyance. A truly beautiful woman would warm the heart and delight the eyes regardless of their posture or expression. Seeing the seemingly fairy turn to human Xia Qinyu, Xiao Yulong's eyes grew more and more passionate. The jealousy in his heart also burned hotter and hotter. This kind of fairy among humans actually became the waste, Xiao Che's wife, but had also been seized by a pig. It was simply a complete waste, something he could not accept nor forgive. Upon hearing that Lady Xia had just turned 16 this year, but had already cultivated to the 10th level of the elementary profound realm, Yulong has always admired you, and been fascinated without end. I believe that when Lady Xia reaches my age, you'll definitely be considerably stronger than me. Xiao Yulong moderated his mood, his face gentle as he spoke. However, even though there's only one level between the 10th level of the elementary profound realm and the first level of the nascent profound realm, but without a path, it is still quite hard to cross that gap. Though I dare not compare my talent with that of Lady Xia, with my experience, I still have quite a bit of insight towards breaking past the elementary profound realm. How about I exchange pointers with Lady Xia for a bit? As he finished speaking, Xiao Yulong walked forward with a smiling expression, his hands gathering his profound strength before reaching for Xia Qinyu's snowy hand. Xia Qinyu may be astonishingly talented, but she was still only in the elementary profound realm. Xiao Yulong was already at the 3rd level of the nascent profound realm and so definitely had the qualifications to teach Xia Qinyu, at least that's what he believed. Seeing that Xiao Yulong not only had obscene desires in his eyes, but had also moved his hands, Xia Qinyu's beautiful eyes suddenly flashed with a blue light. She abruptly held out a hand, empty-handedly pushing in Xiao Yulong's direction. Seeing that Xia Qinyu's hand had unexpectedly extended her jade-like hand out of her own will, Xiao Yulong's eyes revealed a happy expression. He was just about to grab her when he suddenly felt an irresistible force ruthlessly slam into his stomach. With no chance to make a sound, His body flew straight out, flipping in the air once, before falling headfirst onto the ground. At the same time, his two front teeth were knocked free. Xiao Yulong's standing amongst the Xiao clan was extremely high. If a woman that had married into the Xiao clan were to receive his sexual harassment, even if she could overpower him, she wouldn't dare harm him. However, what kind of backing did Xiao have? Behind her was Frozen Cloud Asgard. Even if she beat him until he fell flat on his face, even if she asked for his life, once her status as a disciple of Frozen Cloud Asgard came to light, Xiao Yunhai wouldn't dare complain, but would rather be forced to apologize with a smiling face. Chapter 17, Would you believe that I'm a doctor of miracles? Xiaoche was very clear on whether or not Xiaoqinyu's profound strength was truly at the 10th level of the elementary profound realm, but of course, Xiao Yulong had no idea. Xiaoqinyu had gotten truly angry and used at least 70% of her profound strength just now. Looking at the Xiao Yulong sprawled on the ground, she retracted her palm and then indifferently said, "It looks like young Master Xiao isn't that great at exchanging pointers, please go back." Laying on the ground, Xiao Yulong was stupefied. He originally believed that with his third level of the nascent profound realm's profound strength, taking advantage of Xiaoqinyu would be as easy as reaching out with his hand. No matter what, he didn't think that upon meeting, he would end up on the ground with his entire body bruised and battered without even a chance to react. He stared with wide eyes in shock at the two bloody incisors that had fallen on the ground in front of him. Xiao Yulong immediately picked himself up, his face twitching. He knew how battered and exhausted he looked at the moment. It could be said that with his status as the Xiao clan's young master, he had never in his lifetime been in such a sorry state, and also in front of the woman that he admired and longed for the most. However, young Master Xiao was still young Master Xiao. He forcibly swallowed the blood in his mouth, his face revealing a what could be considered warm and elegant smile. Lady Xia's 10th level of the elementary profound realm strength is deserving of its reputation. Just then I was casually testing and had somewhat underestimated you. Then this time, Lady Xia must pay careful attention. With his two missing front teeth, Xiao Yulong's words were punctuated by the sound of whistling air. After speaking, he had already raised his hands and mobilized all of his profound strength. He naively believed that the reason he ended up at a disadvantage just now was solely because he carelessly acted, whereas Xiaoqinyu had reacted ruthlessly with her entire strength. With his third level of the nascent profound realm's strength, how could he not handle Xiaoqinyu's 10th level of the elementary profound realm? Xiao Yulong walked forward. 3 steps later, both hands simultaneously shot out, seeking to immediately wrap around Xiaoqinyu's arm. His actions caused Xiaoqinyu to loathe him even more. With all her patience exhausted, her right arm abruptly swung out, her red sleeve fluttering along. A gust of profound strength carrying a tinge of icy coldness swept across Xiao Yulong's face. This bit of profound strength didn't carry any trace of the frozen cloud arts, but still wasn't something that Xiao Yulong could handle. With a pain sound, Xiao Yulong's right cheek sank downwards and his entire body flew backwards. He spun in the air at least 7 or 8 times like a top before landing heavily outside the courtyard. 3 bloody teeth also were knocked free, 2 of them stabbing into Xiao Yulong's face. The exchange of pointers is over, I won't see you out. Xiaoqinyu didn't even glance at him, her fairy-like voice ice cold. Xiao Yulong's entire right face was a patch of red, as if dyed with blood. Right now, even if he was an idiot, he would still understand that his third level of the nascent profound realm's strength was, from the start, insufficient in front of Xiaoqinyu. He held the throbbing part of his right face and gave Xiaoqinyu a look dyed with a tinge of terror. Taking in a rough breath, he staggered away without another word. Xiao Yulong had reached the infirmary and was about to enter when he saw Xiaoche just then leaving. His left hand held a medicinal pot and his right, a package. Upon seeing Xiao Yulong, Xiaoche promptly greeted him warmly. "Brother Yulong, why did you come here?" "Hey, Brother Yulong, your face what happened?" Seeing Xiaoche, Xiao Yulong clenched his teeth, let out a cold snort, and immediately rushed into the infirmary. Shortly, the astonished sound of the Xiao clan's chief doctor, Xiao Bu, could be heard from inside. "Young master, who would be so bold to do this kind of evil thing to you? No harm done when I was at the rear mountains training. I wasn't careful and fell down." Xiao Yulong's voice was clearly riddled with pain. Of course he could not admit that his current state was because he was given a lesson while trying to take advantage of Xiaoqinyu. "How is this no harm done? Your cheekbone has been shattered to no small extent, you've lost 5 teeth, and another 3 have been snapped in half. None of these can be grown back." Xiaoche had not walked too far away. The voices that floated into his ear sent a cold chill up his spine. This woman, her actions were far too ruthless. The murdering heart powder that had killed him most likely came from Xiao Yulong. Originally, Xiaoche wanted to borrow Xiaoqinyu's power to give him a little lesson, but how could this be considered a lesson? It was simply beating him half to death. Thinking about how he had used his grandfather as a shield to lead her by the hand early in the morning, Xiaoche couldn't help but break into a cold sweat. When he returned to his own courtyard, Xiaoqinyu was calmly standing in the courtyard center. Seeing him return, she indifferently spoke. Xiao Yulong came over. "Ah, yes, I know. I just saw him at the infirmary." Xiaoche carefully took a look at Xiaoqinyu's expression before prudently responding. Xiaoqinyu no longer paid any attention to him. She lightly closed her eyes and a layer of ice-cold air surrounded her body. "Qinyu, my wife, can I ask you a question?" Xiaoche opened his mouth to ask as he took a step forward. Xiaoqinyu didn't react in the least. "What level is your profound strength really at? To be able to force Xiao Yulong into such a sorry state, she should be at least at the 5th level of the nascent profound realm. To be at the 5th level of the nascent profound realm at the age of 16, if this was revealed, Floating Cloud City would truly explode." Xiaoqinyu still did not react in the least. She didn't seem to have any intention of answering him. The ignored Xiaoche had a face full of gloom. Looking at Xia Qinayu's appearance, she should be silently practicing Frozen Cloud as God's exclusive profound technique, the Frozen Cloud arts. He no longer spoke. After placing the things in his hands on the ground, he leaned his body back, crossed his hands over his chest, and leisurely watched the peaceful Xia Qinayu. He watched until a quarter of an hour had passed. Xia Qinayu generally stayed in her room in the past, while training in the Frozen Cloud arts. Besides her master occasionally giving tips to her from the side, the rest of the time she was by herself with absolutely no one else to bother her, not to mention a man who fixedly watched her with both eyes. Even though she was calmly standing there with her eyes closed, firmly concentrating on her training with the Frozen Cloud arts circulating through her body, she could still feel Xiaoche standing there watching her. Moreover, it was a constant stare. His gaze hardly ever left her for even a moment. That piercing gaze over and over again swept over every part of her body, giving her no way of completely calming her heart. Her entire body was uncomfortable after all. She was still only a 16-year-old girl. To expect her heart to truly be like still water was simply asking for too much. After an entire quarter hour, Xiaoche was still standing there, his gaze firmly on her. Xia Qinayu finally could not restrain herself and opened her beautiful eyes to glance at him, coldly saying, "What are you doing, always staring at me?" "Waiting for you to voluntarily speak to me," Xiaoche innocently replied. Xia Qinayu had the urge to kill someone. Cough cough, actually, I had something really important to talk to you about. But I was afraid of interrupting your training just now, so I had no choice but to wait. Xiaoche got up, his expression sincere. "What is it?" Xia Qinayu asked, strongly suppressing her anger. It's like this." Xiaoche's expression became serious. He took a few steps forward until he was standing in front of Xia Qinayu, then confidently said, "Early this morning, when I held your hand, don't do anything. I'm talking about serious business, serious business." Upon seeing Xia Qinayu suddenly reveal her killing intent, Xiaoche promptly retreated several steps, a wary expression appearing on his face. The miserable state Xiao Yulong had just been in provided a bloody lesson, seeing that Xia Qinayu didn't, in fact, do anything. Xiaoche let out a small sigh of relief and continued, "When I held your hand, I felt your pulse in passing and found a big problem. An extremely big problem." His words didn't cause Xia Qinayu's gaze to waver even a bit. She didn't believe him from the start. Though she did feel him secretly measuring her pulse when he led her by the hand this morning, how could the man from the Xiao family that all of floating clouds sit in knew to be weak know anything about pulses? But Xiaoche's following words nevertheless caused Xia Qinayu to tremble slightly. "Isn't it true that you wake up every day at 3 in the morning? And not only that, but for the next half hour, your entire body would be ice cold, and your 4 limbs sore?" Xia Qinayu's gaze wavered, unwittingly asking, "How do you know?" Xiaoche continued to speak. "Also, after training in the floating cloud secret arts, every time your profound strength makes a breakthrough, within the next 2 or 3 days, isn't it true that your entire body would be ice cold, your 4 limbs sore, and you'd be unable to eat or sleep peacefully?" Xia Qinayu's gaze once again violently shook because what Xiaoche said was not wrong at all. Also, Xiaoche's feet moved straight in the direction of the courtyard door. Not until half his body was outside that or did he say with a serious face, "Your last period, wasn't it late by about 7 or 8 days?" Xia Qinayu, !% Only when he didn't feel any killing intent from Xia Qinayu did Xiaoche cautiously walk back from the courtyard door. "Do you believe me now? How do you know all of this?" Xia Qinayu's eyebrows drooped as she asked. "From your pulse. You can measure pulses? Would you believe me if I said I am a doctor of miracles?" Xiaoche asked with a sincere face. "If you want to joke around, then go find your little aunt." Xia Qinayu glanced at him without expression. Of course, Xiaoche didn't expect Xia Qinayu to believe him. It would be weirder if she actually believed him. These are all very serious symptoms. You don't want to know how to treat them. No need. Xia Qinayu let out a cold voice. The Frozen Cloud arts is the Frozen Cloud as God's exclusive profound technique, subtle yet inexhaustible. Once you start practicing the Frozen Cloud arts, your entire body will have a hard time adjusting to the cold and will more or less show some negative side effects. In the Frozen Cloud as God, this is common sense that's known to all the disciples. Even Master and Master's ancestors experienced this. Once the Frozen Cloud arts have been trained to a certain extent, these negative side effects will disappear completely on their own. Yes, what you said isn't wrong." Xiaoche nodded with deep consideration, then said with a chuckle, "But I also finally have some understanding of why Frozen Cloudasgard teaches to prohibit emotion and suppresses desires, because even if the women of Frozen Cloudasgard had lovers, they still wouldn't be able to have children. If this were to be leaked, it would be very harmful to Frozen Cloudasgard's prestige. It's better to prohibit the disciples of Frozen Cloudasgard from seeing men and at the same time, protect this pretty disgraceful secret." Xia Qinayu's eyebrows suddenly slanted and her gaze abruptly became cold. For the first time, she was truly angry at Xiaoche. "Shut up. I can tolerate your nonsense, but I won't allow you to insult my school. If you continue with even half a sentence more of that kind of talk, then I won't forgive you." Now, the previously cautious and cowering Xiaoche had not even a hint of a fearful expression. Instead, he faintly smiled and said leisurely, "Whether or not I was wrong, I know very well. I can also tell you the more powerful the profound strength, the longer the life expectancy. However, from your pulse, I am absolutely certain that the life expectancy of members of your Frozen Cloudasgard is 1/3 less than that of someone else with the same level of profound strength, if not more. Am I right or am I wrong?" Xiaoche's words were like a clap of thunder next to Xia Qinayu's ears and caused her 2 beautiful pupils to contract for an instant. Chapter 18, A Silver Needle to Release the Cold. "Who did you hear that from?" Xiaoqinyu coldly asked, her thoughts startled. At the same level of profound strength, the life expectancy of members of Frozen Cloudaskid was shorter than other people's by a large amount. This was the cruel truth. Even within Frozen Cloudaskid, this was a secret that had always been suppressed by the Frozen Cloudaskid's leadership. The reason why Xiaoqinyu knew about it was because her master had absent-mindedly mentioned it to her after one of her breakthroughs. Furthermore, she told her that this was Frozen Cloudaskid's biggest flaw and strictly ordered her not to tell anyone, including her fellow disciples. Yet here, Xiaoqie had readily said it out loud. If I were the master of the Frozen Cloudaskid, I would use all my might to hide this flaw and prevent outsiders from finding out. Do you think I could have possibly heard this from anyone? Xiaoqie said, curling his lips. I really came to this conclusion from measuring your pulse, that's all. From your reaction, it seems that everything I said was right. I don't believe you. Xiaoqinyu resolutely shook her head. To be able to infer Frozen Cloudaskid's biggest secret just from a pulse? That's ridiculous. If it was that easy, with the countless number of spirit doctors in Blue Wind Empire, Frozen Cloudaskid's secret would have been exposed who knows how many years ago. However, everything Xiaoqie had just said went straight to the crux of the matter, without any flaws at all. There was no way Xiaoqinyu would not be bewildered. I knew that you won't believe me. Xiaoqie picked up the medicinal pot and package from the ground and walked into the house. Follow me. Xiaoqinyu's gaze swept over the items held in his hands. After a bit of hesitation, she followed him into the room and closed the door behind her. After setting down the medicinal pot and package, Xiaoqie ordered Xiaoqinyu, sit down. What do you want to do? Xiaoqinyu looked at him with suspicion. Obviously, I want to treat you. There's no need. Xiaoqinyu immediately shook her head. Whether it's necessary or not, it's best if you wait until afterwards to decide. Hey, you shouldn't be unwilling to even try it, right? Xiaoqie opened the package and took out a silver box. He let out a sigh. A look of frustration and disappointment appeared on his face. I know you basically don't believe anything I say. But at the very least, I don't have the ability, nor any reason, to hurt you. The reason I retrieved these things from the infirmary early in the morning is only because I wanted to give you treatment, that's all. If it works, then that's good. If not, you still won't lose anything since you don't want to believe me, and don't want to give it a try, then forget it. Just pretend it's unrequited affection. Xiaoqie's words startled Xiaoqinyu and a bit of guilt grew in her heart. It was true that what he said before, and what he was saying now were all to help treat her. He didn't request anything from her or raise any conditions. He also, as he said so himself, had no reason or ability to harm her no matter what the result. To outright reject him was really a bit excessive. Xiaoqinyu let out a sigh in her heart and then sat down next to Xiaoqie. How are you going to treat me? You're willing to receive treatment? Xiaoqie gave her a look and then turned his face away with a snort. His attitude of a wrong child left Xiaoqinyu unable to decide whether she should laugh or cry, and her voice relaxed. I want to see how you'll treat me. Now that's more obedient. When Xiaoqie turned his face back, his expression was all smiles. This caused Xiaoqinyu to stare distractedly at him. This guy's mood swings were really too quick. Extend your hand. Xiaoqie sat in front of Xiaoqinyu. Xiaoqinyu also accordingly extended both arms, resting them horizontally on the table. Her red sleeves pushed up to her elbows, exposing a pair of dreamy, snow-white arms. Xiaoqie opened the silver box. Surprisingly, arranged inside were several tens of thread-thin silver needles. Silver needles? Don't tell me you are going to use acupuncture? Xiaoqinyu's moon-like brows raised. Eh? You actually know acupuncture? Xiaoqie gave her a somewhat surprised look. Back on Blue Cloud Continent, there weren't even 10 people that could perform acupuncture, even if he and his medical saint master were included. However, on Profound Sky Continent, this apparently was among one of the more popular medical treatments. It was even possible to find a set of acupuncture tools in the Xiao clan's infirmary. Of course I know. I also know that to be skilled in acupuncture techniques requires a lot of time. You need tens of years to have even a little bit of success. I've never heard that you were studying medical techniques, not to mention acupuncture. Also, your room doesn't have the smell or mark of traditional medicine. What exactly are you going to do? Xiaoqinyu's eyes all along were wary and suspicious. Xiaoqie took out a silver needle, gripping its base with 2 fingers. When Xiaoqie picked up the silver needle, Xiaoqinyu's gaze became slightly distracted. That was because in Xiaoqie's hands, that silver needle had a kind of indescribable feeling of harmony, as if it had been naturally grown from Xiaoqie's hands. This feeling was very subtle and indescribable, yet it clearly and truly existed. Xiaoqie opened a small bottle and carefully dipped the silver needle inside. Whether or not I know how to perform acupuncture, you'll immediately find out. Of course, if you feel that there's something wrong, or feel that I'm playing around, you can have me stop whenever you want. What's inside that bottle? Xiaoqinyu's gaze fell upon that small bottle. Ordinary juice from the scarlet sunflower. Xiaoqie responded without thinking, his gaze falling upon Xiaoqinyu's snowy arms. The left hand holding the silver needle flickered slightly. Xiaoqie's movement was exceedingly fast, so fast that Xiaoqinyu couldn't react. When Xiaoqie's left hand withdrew, the silver needle between his fingers could no longer be seen. Instead, on her right wrist, a silver needle was inserted vertically, accurately landing on the Yankai point. There was no pain. It could be better described as no feeling at all. If it weren't for the fact that she was staring blankly at this silver needle, she wouldn't have known that there was a silver needle piercing her wrist at all. Xiaoqinyu was moved so quick. No, this was quick, but rather skillful. A kind of skill that had reached an astonishing level, to the point where it could be said to be at its peak. The second silver needle was picked up by Xiaoqie and dipped in the scarlet sunflower juice. As he leaned towards Xiaoqinyu's right wrist, His wrist shook slightly and the second silver needle accurately pierced the Yanggu acupuncture point. The third and fourth needle were pierced into the Zongzu and Higa points respectively. After the right hand, another 4 silver needles pierced the left hand's Yankai, Yanggu, Zongzu, and Higa 4 points. Each time, his movements were so quick that Xiaoqinyu could only see a faint shadow pass by. The astonishment in her heart also accordingly rose with each silver needle's pierce. Raw said her astonishment overlapped with the needles or something. She didn't know if Xiaoqi's treatment would have any effect, but Xiaoqinyu fundamentally couldn't believe that this technique, skillful to the point of bewitchment, was performed by a 16-year-old boy. Relax your hands and breathe steadily. Under no circumstances are you to use profound strength. Xiaoqi's voice echoed next to her ear. She cooperated with him. Her hands loosened and her breath calmed. At this moment, she suddenly felt ice-cold air condense within both hands. Then, as if finding a drain, it quickly rushing towards the 4 Yankai, Yanggu, Zongzu, and Higa points that had been pierced by silver needles. Suddenly, wisps of white mist slowly rose above the 8 silver needles, the cold air stored within quickly lowering the surrounding temperature. Upon feeling the cold air fleeing from her meridians and the quickly rising white fog, Xiaoqinyu's snowy face violently twitched. It took a few minutes for the white fog to completely stop rising. At this time, Xiaoqi suddenly reached out and flicked both his hands, his fingers moving like a mirage. In a split second, all 8 of the silver needles that had been pierced into Xiaoqinyu's hands had been returned into his and then placed in a different case. This cold air was even heavier than I thought. It's good that you met me. Xiaoqi muttered in a small voice, then closed the silver needle case and said, Kinyu my wife, how do your hands feel now? Xiaoqinyu raised both of her hands, her eyes wavering. Light, cozy, warm, that was how her hands felt right now. As if she was suddenly freed from some kind of heavy restraint. It was the first time since she started cultivating the frozen cloud sacred arts that she had felt this kind of warmth in her palm and arms. She lifted her eyes to look at Xiaoqi, asking in astonishment, what exactly is this? It's actually really simple. I just released the cold air inside your hands and the meridians in your hands. At the same time, I unblocked the clogged meridians. That's all. Xiaoqi humbly said, your frozen cloud as good's profound technique can allow profound to become ice cold and thus greatly increase your power. The reason the ice cold profound chi is more powerful is because cold air is very harmful to people. Your enemies are people, but you are also a person. Before harming someone else, you inevitably harm yourself first. This is a very obvious principle. This morning, when I touched your palm, I found that your palm's temperature was much colder than that of a normal person. Perhaps the members of your frozen cloud as good really believe that this is the expected result of cultivating the frozen cloud arts, but from a medical standpoint, it would be weird if this kind of body temperature was considered normal. Normally, when you don't use your profound strength, the profound strength collects in your profound veins and won't influence your body. However, as soon as it's used, the frozen cloud profound chi links with your entire body, injuring it when it's released. When it's circulating, it will also harm you. You should not have been cultivating the frozen cloud arts for more than a few years, but a large amount of cold air has already permeated your 5 viscera, 6 bowels, blood, bone marrow, and danshan, and it is still accumulating. Over time, it will continually cause severe harm to your internal organs. It would be strange if it didn't shorten your life. These negative effects really are things you would never come across normally. Plaza Google these medical things yourself. Xiaoqinyu. In addition, under the cold air, the body's many meridians will frequently spasm and then close up, greatly affecting your ability to use profound chi. You can try to transfer profound strength to your hands and see how it compares to before. Xiaoqi spoke with a stern face. Xiaoqi's confident opinion was stated reasonably from start to finish and was presented with cause and effect. Not only that, but the reasoning was so easy to understand that even an idiot listening could understand. Once Xiaoqi's earnest reactions were added, it was basically impossible to question or refute him. As Xiaoqi was speaking with that stern face, his heart was actually grimacing because while everything that he had just said was actually true, but it was both true and yet also nonsense. That cold air amassing within would harm the body was true. The fact that it would close the meridians was also true, but if the frozen cloud arts were as unbearable as he stated, how would frozen cloud as good be worth anything? Not to mention being at the peak of the Blue Wind Empire, it wouldn't even be able to last another 800 years. After cultivating the frozen cloud arts for a while, the body will have completely gotten used to it. Then, the cold air in the body, while it used to be harmful, would not only stop harming them, but also provide assistance. The congested meridians would also naturally clear. However, Xiaoqinyu has only been cultivating the frozen cloud arts for 3 or 4 years. She naturally couldn't be at the completely adapted phase. With his words combining with her own experiences up to now, in addition to the feeling after the treatment, Xiaoqi's arguments sounded fundamentally flawless to her. Treatment was only an excuse. The frozen cloud arts flaw was also only an excuse. What he wanted to accomplish, only he knew. Chapter 19, Opening the Profound. After hearing Xiaoqi's words, Xiaoqinyu tried to concentrate her profound strength into her hands. Immediately, her heart once again skipped a beat. That was because compared to before, the profound strength flowing into her hands was unobstructed by a large margin. Its speed was also faster by 20 or 30%. Seeing Xiaoqinyu's reaction, Xiaoqi nodded in satisfaction. Don't you feel that it's much less congested and faster than before? If we release the rest of the cold air in your body and clear your meridians, you'll have the same body temperature as a normal person's when not practicing the frozen cloud arts. None of the negative side effects will manifest and the speed at which you can use your profound strength will increase by at least half. Not only that, from now on, the speed at which you cultivate the frozen cloud arts will increase by at least 30%. Oh, I'm only just casually speaking. If you just listened casually to, then that would be fine, because you would never allow me to do these things. As Xiaoche spoke, he already started cleaning up the things that he had brought from the infirmary. Did you just say that the speed at which I cultivate the frozen cloud arts will increase by 30%? Xiaoqinayu suddenly turned her head. Xiaoche's statement absolutely shocked her, so much so that she wanted to believe him, yet couldn't bring herself to do so. A pill that would allow a person to, for 1 or 2 years, advance 10 or 20% faster would be, without contest, classified as a rare treasure, so much that it would cause a huge scramble that would give rise to a battlefield drenched in bloody rain. Yet the meaning of Xiaoche's words was actually a permanent increase of 30%. This sentence was far more than astonishing. If there was something, or some condition, that allowed a person's cultivation speed to permanently increase as much as 30%, Xiaoqinayu believed without a doubt that all of the world's heroes would flock out to obtain it with all their power. Yes. Xiaoche nodded. It's up to you whether you believe me or not. On the contrary, Xiaoche's believe it or not attitude caused Xiaoqinayu to believe in him some more. That, coupled with the effects of his treatment that she had personally experienced, meant that she was unable to question much when faced with the astonishing things that he humbly said afterwards. This feeling surprised even herself. The huge frozen cloud as could had been in existence on Blue Wind Empire for thousands of years, but had never heard of the existence of a method with this kind of shocking result. In this small floating cloud city, a youth of only 16 years age with a deformed profound vein could unexpectedly could say this confidently and also had her unable to stop herself from faintly believing in him. If it really has the effect that you claim, then why would you say that I wouldn't agree to have you do it? Xiaoqinayu asked. Well, Xiaoche lifted the corner of his mouth and deadpanned. It's really simple. If you think about it, you'll understand. To extract the cold air from your entire body and clear the meridians, then you definitely need to have needles all over your body. Since you need to have needles on your body, then of course you'd have to undress. At the very least you would have to show me your entire back. You won't even let me touch your hand. Are you willing to undress in front of me? Xiaoqinayu. Alright, the silver needles have been used. I should take these back to the infirmary. Xiaoche gave Xiaoqinayu a faint smile. No need to thank me. After all, you are my wife. Yesterday, in the dead of night, you ran out to bring me a blanket, so whatever I do for you is only to be expected. Watching Xiaoche's back as he packed everything, Xiaoqinayu's expression continuously changed. Finally, she once again voluntarily spoke. I've always known all about the accumulation of cold air in my body. I also know that the early stages of the frozen cloud arts will congest my meridians. If scattering the cold air and clearing the meridians really can relieve the body's discomfort, and will also definitely improve the use of profound strength, what does it have to do with increasing the speed at which I cultivate profound strength? This touches on very complex medical knowledge. Very complex, so I don't really want to talk about it. Also, I bet that even if I did explain, you wouldn't be able to understand, Xiaoche vaguely replied. His forehead almost breaking out into cold sweat. He originally believed that the earlier words coupled with the acupuncture treatment had already succeeded in convincing Xiaoqinayu. He didn't expect that she would suspiciously ask about it, and straight about the crux of the matter to boot. That was because there wasn't the slightest bit of relationship between the speed of cultivation, and the cold air and meridians. Fortunately, Xiaoqinayu didn't continue her line of questioning. Right when Xiaoche finished wrapping everything up, she spoke again. These things, where did you learn them from? From your acupuncture technique just now. You definitely have the qualifications to join those huge medical schools. If you really have the ability to do what you just said, then not to mention this small floating cloud city, all of Blue Wind Empire would know your name. How could you remain unknown, and instead have this reputation as a cripple? Join those medical schools? Xiaoche curled his lips in disdain. He then turned around and serenely stated, these things were all taught to me by my master. Your master? Xiaoqinayu's moon-like brows twitched. She had never heard of Xiaoche having any kind of master. My master was a great medical saint. His entire life was spent using his knowledge to help people, and he saved countless dying and injured people. I met him when I was very young. He taught me the 4 ways of medical diagnosis, how to use the needle, and the principles of pharmacology and toxicology. He taught me that under heaven, there was a countless number of medicines and poisons, pests and herbs. I am his only successor. His kindness to me was as heavy as a mountain, impossible to repay in this lifetime. That is why I know some medical techniques. As for the rest, you shouldn't ask too much. Also, don't tell any outsiders that I practice medicine. Even my grandfather and little aunt are unaware. Aside from myself, you're the only other person who knows. TL, 4 ways of medical diagnosis equals look, smell, ask, and cut. As he thought about his dead master, Xiaoche could not stop his face from showing a sad and nostalgic expression. This was his most sincere emotion, without a shred of falsehood or artifice. This sincere emotion also affected Xiaoqinayu, who, with complete conviction in Xiaoche's words, gently said, for you to be this young and yet have such shocking skill in acupuncture, it seems that your master definitely is a great doctor. He was the world's greatest doctor, without peer. Xiaoche firmly said. Xiaoche's appearance caused Xiaoqinayu's inner doubt to unconsciously lessen by a bit. After hesitating for a bit, she finally made her up mind. Then, you are sure that what you said about letting me permanently cultivate 30% faster is true? Since I said it, then I wouldn't disgrace my master's name as a doctor. You wouldn't be thinking about trying it? Xiaoche turned around and looked at her with a face full of astonishment. Xiaoqinayu let out a small sigh of relief, glancing over. You're sure you only need to see the back? Xiaoche's eyes lit up and his face moved closer. He smilingly said, if you really want to show everything, then that's okay too. Xiaoqinayu's eyebrows drooped and her red sleeves unfurled. A sudden gust of cold wind assaulted Xiaoche's entire body, causing him to shiver. she walked towards the bed, faintly saying, "Let's start. Let me see if your medical techniques are as miraculous as you say. However, if you get any ideas, I definitely won't forgive you." Xiaoche gave a wily smile. "You could kill me with a slap. Even if I had ideas I wouldn't dare try." The box of silver needles and jar of crimson sunflower juice that had just been put away were once again brought out. Afterwards, he walked to the bedside and said with a solemn face to the Xiaoqinai already sitting on top the bed, "Undress." It was a pure word, but when shouted by Xiaoche, it gave an impression of an evil tyrant forcing himself upon an innocent woman. When thinking about this, the inner heart of even the incorruptible and world-defiant pure lotus that was Xiaoqinai, upon hearing this word, had some kind of reaction. However, the temptation of a permanent 30% increase to her cultivation speed was too much to bear. So much that it's safe to say that no profound practitioners would be able to resist. This was because if it really succeeded, it's the same as saying that with the same talent and comprehension, the same profound arts and profound skills, and the same environment and resources, the advancement from cultivating 3 years would be equivalent to the opposition's cultivation of 4 years. After a century, you would exceed the opposition's advancement by 30 years. Xiaoche also was certain that even though Xiaoqinai had to undress, she still wouldn't refuse. That was because Xiaoqinai clearly was girl seeking to climb to higher heights of profound strength. If not, she wouldn't have joined Frozen Cloud as good without care about the consequences of abstaining from both emotion and passion. If everything were to happen as he said, then this kind of price would be absolutely worth it, to say nothing of the fact that it was only the back. Xiaoqinai thought of it like this and turned her back to Xiaoche. She gently laid down on her stomach, her heart as still as a mirror. She closed her eyes and unbuttoned her dress. Her crimson dress slowly slid along the lines of her fragrant shoulders and jade-like arms. The dazzling white back of a beautiful girl, without a stitch to cover it, appeared in front of Xiaoche's eyes. She pulled over the quilt, holding it at her bosom. The red dress continued to slide down, revealing an ample and alluring bottom, exposing the liquid curve of her jade-like back. Her back was slender, yet not scrawny, clear and lustrous without peer. The skin of her neck and shoulder were flawlessly soft and seemingly pink, as if it had been lubricated. Xiaoche's rapt gaze widened, as if he was in a trance. "Start immediately. You're not allowed to have any other ideas." Xiaoqinai closed her eyes, her voice cold. "Isn't a woman's body supposed to be seen by her husband?" Xiaoche carefully muttered, then closed his mouth and picked up a silver needle. The moment the needle was in his hand, his expression became heavy with concentration. As Xiaoqinai felt the steadying of Xiaoche's breath behind her, she swallowed her retort and no longer spoke, lightly closing her eyes. Although even now, she still couldn't quite believe that what Xiaoche said was the truth, but she couldn't resist the temptation of a 30% increase to her cultivation speed, no matter how small of a chance it was. The sound of wind could be heard accompanying the sway of Xiaoche's wrists. A silver needle lightly and accurately pierced the Tanzong acupuncture point on Xiaoqinai's jade-like back. His finger didn't touch her skin at all. Xiaoche began to move his fingers as if they were flying. The silver needles were picked up by him one by one, rapidly and accurately piercing Xiaoqinai's back. It was almost to the point where all that could be seen was a swaying shadow. Xiaoqinai closed her eyes, all of her attention on her back. She began to notice that every time a silver needle pierced into her back, there was always a trace of profound strength accompanying it. This discovery immediately caused Xiaoqinai's heart to skip a beat. She was perfectly clear about the condition of Xiaoche's body. With his deformed profound veins, he could only stop at the first level of the elementary profound realm. The only profound chi that he could use was the most basic and smallest kind. However, as each needle was inserted into her back, even though the accompanying profound chi was minute, it was still at the upper limit for the first level of the elementary profound realm. She did not know why Xiaoche needed to add profound strength to the needles. However, this clearly meant that with every needle, he was using all of his strength. She didn't notice for the first 8 needles because they were placed so quickly and her concentration was all on Xiaoche's technique. This awareness made it momentarily impossible to calm the waves in her heart. At this point, her back had been pierced by 23 needles. Xiaoche's speed also noticeably decreased. If Xiaoqinai had looked back at this moment, she would have seen that his entire face was faintly red and his brow was beaded with sweat. Chapter 20. This is really interesting. For the first 20 or so needles, Xiaoche's handling was very effortless. However, when sweat started to appear on his forehead, the left hand holding the needle also started to tremble. In addition, his movements clearly slowed by quite a bit. Before, he could pierce one needle in the space of a breath, but then it gradually turned into several breaths after 30 needles. It took longer and longer each time. If Xiaoqinai looked back, she would notice that while Xiaoche was giving acupuncture treatment, he always used his left hand. He wasn't left-handed at all, and it's even less true that his left hand was more skilled. Rather, it was because the sky poison pearl was contained in his left hand. Whenever a silver needle pierced down, the sky poison pearl in his palm would lightly flicker once. Following the silver needles, the sky poison pearl's power silently entered Xiaoqinai's body. Of course, this power wasn't some kind of poison, but rather was a purifying force. The sky poison pearl had the ability to purify the world's tens of thousands of poisons. In addition, this poison didn't necessarily have to be a life-ending kind of poison, but also included poisons that damaged the body's interior, as well as superfluous impurities. However, this wasn't necessarily as simple as washing the marrow and cutting the artery. To use the power of the sky poison pearl was the main reason that he racked his brains today figuring out how to give Xiaoqinai acupuncture treatment. To disperse the cold air and clear the meridians were only side effects and pretenses. What he was really doing was opening the profound for Xiaoqinai. 1 minute passed, 10 minutes passed, a quarter of an hour passed. Wisps of cold air slowly rose from each and every silver needle. After a full half an hour had passed, Xiaoqinayu's back had been pierced by a full 54 needles. Xiaoche's hands finally stopped moving at this point, but after stopping for not even half a minute, he once again reached out, both hands dancing. He removed each and every needle from Xiaoqinayu's back with incomparable swiftness. In the blink of an eye, all of the 54 needles had vanished from Xiaoqinayu's back. Xiaoqinayu's jade back was still luminously snow white, like the purest of white jade. Under Xiaoche's extremely skilled technique, not a single mark was left. It stunned Xiaoche, having recovered all the needles, breathed a long sigh of relief. The moment all the silver needles were removed, Xiaoqinayu felt as if she were floating through heaven, her entire body indescribably warm and cozy. It made it hard for her to believe, through her stupor, that this was indeed her own body. She threw her clothes back on and immediately used her profound strength. As the frozen cloud arts rushed forth, she almost jumped in fright, because her profound strength transferred practically the moment the thought crossed her mind. The speed at which it circulated within her body was a cause for joy, as it was many times faster than it was before. Even after practicing the frozen cloud arts for 4 years, she still frequently had moments when she couldn't completely control it. However, now, feeling the frozen cloud arts circulating through her body, she was completely certain that with her body in its current state, she could completely control it. The speed at which the frozen cloud arts circulated also, as a natural result, improved by a tier. She did not have many hopes to begin with, so she was pleasantly surprised from the bottom of her heart at this kind of result. At the same time, she was also overwhelmingly shocked that everything that Xiaoche had spoken of had in fact been achieved. Furthermore, the results were even better than he said they would be. She believed that her current body state would even startle her own master, if she were to see it. Now do you believe me? Xiaoche's voice echoed next to her ear, but seemed to be especially hoarse and weak. Xiaoqinayu returned to her senses and looked towards Xiaoche. He was powerlessly leaning against the headboard. His forehead and all of his clothing had already been soaked in sweat and his complexion was pale enough to frighten, like he had just survived a severe illness. Thinking about how every needle had been accompanied by profound strength, an aching feeling suddenly appeared in her heart, a feeling similar to being pricked. This feeling threw her mind into disorder, because she shouldn't have any feelings of heartache for this person that she could only share the status of being married, and nothing else, with. I believe that you really are a spirit doctor. Xiaoqinayu gave him a complex look. It turns out that you, who had been looked down upon by everybody in Floating Cloud City, actually had such an shocking ability, but you clearly know that I don't have any kind of affection for you. After 1 month, I will still forever leave you. Why expose all of this to me? Why grant me such a large favor and try so hard for me? Favor, this was really an incomparably immense favor. 3 reasons. The powerless Xiaoche panted and was gasping for breath, but still smiled with his entire face. Almost everyone looked down on me and you had even more reason to look down on me. But you didn't, and instead have always protected my pathetic dignity to the best of your ability. Last night, you went out to look for me because you were worried, and also silently delivered a blanket for me. Everyone who treats me well, I will forever treat them even better. Xiaoqinayu, the second reason you are, all in all, my wife. Xiaoqinayu opened her mouth a few times, but couldn't find the words. The third reason is also the most important reason. The smile on Xiaoche's face turned vague. I thought that your appearance after undressing would be a lovely sight to see. Whenever Xiaoche took liberties with her using his vulgar mouth, she would always treat him with a cold indifference. However, this time, watching the vulgar smile on his pale face, she couldn't bring herself to be angry. The explanation is over. Xiaoche extended a hand towards the medicinal pot that he had brought. Kinayu, my wife, go pour out the medicine in that medicinal pot and drink it. Xiaoqinayu gave him a very deep look, then walked over without asking what kind of medicine it was. She poured the concoction from the pot out and swallowed it in one gulp. This is the first treatment. If you want to keep this current state forever, you need a total of 7 treatments. The best time is at 3 in the morning because this is the one time in the day when the yin qi is the heaviest and result of the treatment, the best. Of course, whether we proceed or not, the decision lies with you. After saying all of that, Xiaoche closed his eyes in exhaustion. It definitely wasn't an act. His physical strength had truly been gravely overtaxed. Have a good rest. Xiaoqinayu's gaze became even more complex. After she quietly spoke, she walked outside and soundlessly closed the door. Standing in the center of the courtyard, Xiaoqinayu raised her hands and looked at her palms, the expression in her eyes hazy. What kind of person is he really? At the very least, I've always judged him wrongly. All of Floating Cloud City have also judged him wrongly. After Xiaoqinayu left, Xiaoche's body had also fallen completely and crookedly onto the bed. He rested there, not wanting to move at all, his mouth occasionally uttering a vague mumble. My current stamina is too poor. I almost collapsed from fatigue just opening the profound. If Master knew that I actually had the other person take off her clothes, he might be angry enough to come down from heaven to teach me a lesson. After all, I could practice acupuncture through clothing at the age of 13 and could practice acupuncture through clothing with my eyes closed at 15. To sleep. The entire Xiao clan had been immersed in an extremely different atmosphere ever since they received the letter from the Xiao sect. Clan master, elders, performed their duties each day with great diligence. From morning to evening, they prepared to greet them for fear of showing the least bit of neglect. The younger generation, as if on steroids, trained even harder. They all dreamed of having a breakthrough in these next few days, thereby increasing the chance of being brought back to the Xiao sect. However, all of this clearly had nothing to do with Xiaoche. He could be counted as the most leisurely person in the entire Xiao clan. Today, at the Xiao clan's rear mountain. This was the cemetery opened up in the rear mountains by the Xiao clan. After a member of the Xiao clan died, it was more than likely that they would be buried here. Xiao Lai quietly stood in front of a gravestone, his white hair, the result of having been through many changes and sorrow, fluttering freely in the wind. The wind whistled. Everything else was desolate. On this gravestone, the two words Xiao Ying were engraved. Ying, I know that ever since childhood, you dreamed of fulfilling your ancestors' hopes and returning to the Xiao sect. To shake off this abandoned blood of ours. Now, this opportunity has finally arrived. It's just 16 years too late. The expression in Xiao Lai's eyes was misty. He stiffly stood there, his mouth uttering an involuntary sort of mutter. I know, even though so many years have passed, that you still have many concerns. Chia's profound veins have been deformed since his childhood. This is also fine. Even though he's destined to be mediocre all his life, but without action, there won't be struggle and hatred. Now, Chia is already married. I hope from now on he can always live on peacefully. Even though he's not your real child, he is still the one that you two spent your lives, and the life of your child, to protect. I will also protect his peace to the best of my ability. Snap. A quiet snapping sound entered Xiao Lai's ear, startling him. He returned to his senses in a flash and turned his head, shouting in a low voice. Who? Following his shout, Xiao Yulong's figure walked over from behind a thick and solid tree at the center of the courtyard. He looked at Xiao Lai distractedly, walked forward a few steps and assumed the proper etiquette of a junior. Yulong greets Fifth Elder. I did not think that Fifth Elder would even be here. Did Yulong disturb Fifth Elder? Xiao Lai's eyes revealed his turmoil. His heart was just then filled with sorrow and he was despondent for a time. It was unexpected that he didn't discover someone approach this place. He also didn't know if this Xiao Yulong had heard his monologue just now. He furrowed his brows and asked, Yulong, what are you doing here? Xiao Yulong promptly responded, Xiao sect's emissaries will arrive tomorrow. Father believes that this is a large event that will change the Xiao clan's fate, and believed that he should inform his grandfather. So he had me come to accidentally disturb the Fifth Elder. Yulong made a mistake. Then did you hear what I just said? Xiao Lai's voice became cold and stiff all at once. An imposing aura abruptly pushed against Xiao Yulong. The strength of someone at the peak of the spirit profound realm was more than what Xiao Yulong could withstand with his current ability. As his complexion paled, he immediately shook his head. Yulong also just arrived. If Fifth Elder hadn't just then spoke, I wouldn't have discovered Fifth Elder. I definitely didn't hear Fifth Elder say anything. If Fifth Elder does not wish to be disturbed, Yulong will immediately leave. Xiao Lai couldn't spot any gaps in Xiao Yulong's expression. His thoughts relaxed a bit and his aura retracted. His expression also eased. Forget it, it's nothing. The Xiao sect emissary will arrive tomorrow. You are the most likely to be selected. When that time comes, you will be reviving our blood's greatest wish. Fifth Elder's words are heavy. Yulong doesn't deserve them, Xiao Yulong humbly said. Xiao Lai nodded towards him and turned around to leave this place. After he left, Xiao Yulong's expression gradually changed subtle. He rubbed his chin with his right hand and muttered with a frown. Don't tell me if this is true, this would be really interesting.